Welcome to this evening's contemplative exploration of one of the most profound yet subtle transformations in digital culture and human connection. As we settle into this comprehensive examination of how game streaming evolved from simple screen sharing to direct experiential transmission, we embark on a journey that illuminates not just technological progress, but fundamental questions about consciousness, privacy, empathy, and the nature of shared human experience in our increasingly connected world. If you enjoy this type of content, a like or a subscription is always appreciated. It helps our small corner of the internet grow. I invite you to share your own thoughts in the comments below. To understand the magnitude of the transformation that has led us to the Mindstream era of 2035, we must first immerse ourselves in the cultural and technological landscape of traditional streaming as it existed during its golden age, from roughly 2010 to 2025. This was an era when the concept of sharing one's gaming experience meant broadcasting visual and audio feeds of gameplay sessions, creating a surprisingly intimate yet fundamentally limited form of digital connection between content creators and their audiences. Traditional streaming platforms, exemplified by services like Twitch, YouTube Gaming, and later competitors, established the foundational cultural practices that would eventually evolve into the consciousness-sharing technologies we take for granted today. These early platforms created something genuinely new in human culture, the ability for individuals to share their play experiences in real time with global audiences, creating communities around the simple act of watching someone else engage with interactive entertainment. The psychological appeal of traditional streaming rested on fascinating dynamics of parasocial interaction and vicarious engagement that researchers are still studying today. Viewers found genuine entertainment and emotional connection through observing skilled players demonstrate mastery, watching creative individuals build and explore virtual worlds, or simply enjoying the personality and commentary of charismatic streamers who could make even mundane activities engaging through their reactions and interactions. The technological limitations of traditional streaming, which seemed natural and inevitable at the time, now appear almost quaint in their simplicity. Viewers experienced only the audio-visual output of games, supplemented by webcam feeds that showed streamers' faces and reactions, creating a distinctly mediated experience that captured only the surface layer of the gaming experience, while leaving the deeper sensory and emotional dimensions entirely inaccessible. The economic models that emerged around traditional streaming established patterns of monetization and creator support that would profoundly influence the development of more advanced streaming technologies. Subscription systems, donation mechanisms, advertising revenue, and sponsorship arrangements created financial ecosystems that enabled individuals to build careers around sharing their gaming experiences, establishing the precedent that audiences would pay for access to others' play experiences. Community formation around traditional streams demonstrated remarkable human capacity for building meaningful social connections around shared viewing experiences. Chat systems, subscriber communities, and viewer interaction mechanisms created genuine social bonds between streamers and audiences, and among audience members themselves, despite the fundamentally asymmetrical nature of the communication and the limited sensory information available through traditional broadcasting. The cultural phenomena that emerged from traditional streaming included the development of streaming personalities, the evolution of gaming commentary as an art form, and the creation of shared cultural references and inside jokes that bound communities together. These cultural innovations established many of the social norms and expectations that would later be adapted for more immersive streaming technologies. The technical infrastructure supporting traditional streaming required substantial bandwidth and processing power for video encoding, transmission, and playback, creating quality limitations and accessibility barriers that affected who could participate as creators and how many viewers could be effectively served. These technical constraints shaped the entire culture of traditional streaming, encouraging certain types of content while making others impractical or impossible. Privacy considerations in traditional streaming were relatively straightforward compared to later developments, primarily involving decisions about what to show on camera and what personal information to share through commentary. Streamers maintain clear boundaries between their public streaming personas and their private lives, with technology providing natural limits on how much of their experience could be shared with audiences. The educational value of traditional streaming often emerged organically as skilled players shared their knowledge and techniques through demonstration and explanation. Educational content, tutorials, and skill development streams became important categories that demonstrated streaming's potential for knowledge transmission beyond pure entertainment, establishing precedents for the more sophisticated educational applications that would develop with advanced streaming technologies. International and cultural differences in traditional streaming reflected varying attitudes toward privacy, self-expression, and parasocial interaction across different societies. Some cultures embraced streaming more readily than others, and different regions developed distinct streaming cultures and content preferences that would later influence global approaches to more advanced streaming technologies. The psychological effects of traditional streaming consumption were subjects of increasing research interest as the medium matured. Studies examined the impacts of extensive passive media consumption, the development of parasocial relationships with streamers, and the potential for both positive and negative psychological outcomes from heavy streaming viewing habits. Professional gaming and esports broadcasting through traditional streaming platforms helped establish streaming as a legitimate medium for competitive entertainment and skill demonstration. The evolution of professional streaming production values and commentary standards created frameworks for presenting skilled gameplay that would influence later developments in experiential streaming. Content moderation and community management challenges in traditional streaming revealed the complexities of managing real-time interactive communities around live content. These challenges would become even more complex with the development of more intimate streaming technologies, making the solutions developed during the traditional streaming era important precedents for later policy development. The creative possibilities explored through traditional streaming included innovative uses of viewer interaction, integration of games with streaming mechanics, and experimental approaches to collaborative content creation that pushed the boundaries of what was possible within the technical limitations of screen and audio sharing. As we transition into exploring the technological and cultural developments that would eventually supersede traditional streaming, it's important to appreciate the remarkable cultural innovations that emerged from what now seems like primitive technology. The communities, economic models, and social practices developed during the traditional streaming era provided essential foundations for the more sophisticated forms of experience sharing that characterize our current Mindstream ecosystem. The technological bridge between traditional streaming and true experiential sharing began to emerge in the early 2020s as virtual reality, gaming matured, and content creators began experimenting with ways to share not just the visual output of their VR experiences, but approximations of the physical sensations and spatial awareness that made virtual reality uniquely engaging. This period of innovation established many of the technical and cultural foundations that would eventually enable full neural experience sharing. Virtual reality streaming initially faced significant technical challenges that pushed developers to create more sophisticated methods for conveying immersive experiences to audiences who were not wearing VR headsets themselves. Early solutions included specialized camera systems that could capture multiple perspectives within virtual environments, creating more dynamic and engaging viewing experiences than traditional flat-screen recordings of VR gameplay. The development of empathy cameras and perspective switching systems allowed viewers to experience VR streams from multiple viewpoints, including first-person perspectives that more closely approximated the streamer's spatial experience. These systems represented early attempts to bridge the gap between the immersive experience of the VR player and the necessarily limited perspective available to traditional viewers. Haptic feedback transmission emerged as one of the most significant innovations of this period, with developers creating systems that could translate the physical sensations experienced by VR players into haptic feedback for specially equipped viewers. These early haptic streaming systems were crude by contemporary standards, typically limited to basic vibration patterns and simple force feedback, but they represented the first successful attempts to share physical sensations across digital networks. The cultural response to early immersive streaming was mixed, with some audiences embracing the enhanced engagement, while others found the sensory additions overwhelming or unnecessarily intimate. These early reactions foreshadowed many of the cultural and psychological considerations that would become central to the development of more advanced experiential streaming technologies. Accessibility considerations became more complex as streaming technology began incorporating multiple sensory modalities beyond traditional audio and video. Developers needed to create systems that could accommodate viewers with different sensory capabilities, while ensuring that enhanced streaming experiences remained inclusive rather than creating new barriers to participation in streaming communities. Economic models for immersive streaming began evolving during this period as enhanced experiences required more sophisticated technology and production values. Premium streaming tiers emerged that offered haptic feedback or enhanced viewing modes, establishing precedents for the more complex pricing structures that would later develop around neural experience sharing. Content creation workflows became more complex as streamers needed to consider not just their visual presentation, but their physical movements and the haptic experiences they were generating for their audiences. This shift required content creators to develop new skills and awareness around their physical presence and movement patterns in ways that traditional streaming had never demanded. Privacy boundaries began shifting as immersive streaming technologies made more aspects of the streamer's experience accessible to audiences. The transmission of haptic feedback, spatial awareness, and enhanced sensory information required streamers to make more nuanced decisions about what aspects of their experience they were comfortable sharing with others. Technical infrastructure requirements for immersive streaming demanded significant upgrades to bandwidth and processing capabilities compared to traditional streaming. The need to transmit haptic data, spatial positioning information, and enhanced audiovisual content pushed the development of more efficient compression algorithms and transmission protocols. Quality control and standardization efforts emerged as different companies developed incompatible approaches to immersive streaming. Industry organizations began working to establish standards for haptic data transmission, spatial audio encoding, and cross-platform compatibility that would enable broader adoption of enhanced streaming technologies. Research into the psychological effects of enhanced streaming consumption began during this period as researchers sought to understand how the addition of haptic feedback and spatial awareness might affect viewer engagement, empathy, and psychological well-being. Early studies suggested both potential benefits and risks associated with more immersive streaming experiences. International regulatory responses to enhanced streaming technologies varied significantly, with some countries embracing innovation while others expressed concerns about privacy, safety, and cultural impacts. These early regulatory discussions established frameworks that would later be expanded to address more sophisticated neural streaming technologies. Platform competition intensified as major streaming services raced to develop and deploy immersive streaming capabilities. This competition drove rapid innovation while also creating fragmentation in the market as different platforms pursued incompatible technological approaches to enhanced experience sharing. Creator community adaptation to immersive streaming technologies revealed the flexibility and creativity of content creators in adapting to new possibilities while maintaining their distinctive styles and community connections. Many creators found ways to incorporate enhanced streaming features that enhanced rather than disrupted their existing content approaches. Educational applications of immersive streaming began emerging as educators recognized the potential for enhanced experience sharing to improve skill transmission and knowledge transfer. Early experiments in using haptic feedback and spatial awareness for educational content demonstrated the pedagogical value of more immersive sharing technologies. Gaming industry integration with immersive streaming technologies began as game developers started designing experiences specifically to take advantage of enhanced streaming capabilities. These developments represented early recognition that streaming was becoming an integral part of the gaming experience rather than a secondary consideration. Technical safety protocols became increasingly important as immersive streaming systems required more sophisticated approaches to protecting both streamers and viewers from potential negative effects of enhanced sensory transmission. Industry guidelines began developing around safe exposure limits and consent mechanisms for different types of sensory sharing. Cultural preservation efforts emerged as communities recognized that traditional streaming culture was evolving rapidly toward more immersive forms of experience sharing. Documentation and archival projects began capturing the practices and norms of traditional streaming before they were completely superseded by more advanced technologies. The foundation laid during this period of enhanced streaming experimentation established many of the technical standards, cultural practices, and regulatory frameworks that would prove essential for the later development of neural experience sharing technologies. The lessons learned about privacy, consent, technical safety, and community management during the immersive streaming era provided crucial groundwork for the more sophisticated challenges that would emerge with true consciousness sharing. The transition from external sensory enhancement to direct neural interface streaming required fundamental breakthroughs in neuroscience, bioengineering, and computer systems that prioritize safety and consent above all other considerations. The development of consumer-grade neural interfaces during the late 2020s represented one of the most carefully regulated and ethically scrutinized technological advances in human history, with extensive testing and gradual implementation that established the safety protocols we rely on today. Brain-computer interface technology that enabled safe, limited neural signal sharing emerged from decades of medical research into therapeutic applications for paralysis, depression, and other neurological conditions. The adaptation of these medical technologies for entertainment and communication purposes required extensive modification to ensure that the systems could provide engaging experiences while maintaining absolute safeguards against psychological harm or unwanted mental intrusion. The principle of surface consciousness sharing became the cornerstone of safe neural streaming technology, limiting transmitted signals to sensory experiences, emotional responses, and conscious thoughts while maintaining absolute barriers around deeper cognitive processes, memories, and unconscious mental activity. This approach ensured that neural streaming could provide authentic experiential sharing without compromising mental privacy or autonomy. Consent protocols developed for neural streaming established unprecedented standards for informed consent in technology use, requiring extensive education about the nature of neural sharing, comprehensive testing to ensure psychological readiness, and multiple layers of ongoing consent verification during actual streaming sessions. These protocols became models for consent frameworks in other technologies involving intimate personal data. Signal filtering and privacy protection systems represented some of the most sophisticated software engineering achievements of the era, creating real-time analysis and filtering systems that could identify and block potentially sensitive neural signals while allowing appropriate experiential data to be transmitted. These systems required understanding both neuroscience and cybersecurity at levels that pushed the boundaries of both fields. Quality assurance for neurotransmission focused on ensuring that shared experiences were authentic and unmodified while preventing the transmission of potentially harmful or overwhelming sensory data. Advanced signal processing systems learned to identify and moderate extreme sensations while preserving the essential character of the streamer's experience. Emergency disconnection systems became mandatory features of all neural streaming technology, providing multiple independent methods for immediately terminating neural connections if users experienced distress or system malfunction. These safety systems included both automated monitoring that could detect problematic neural patterns and manual controls that gave users absolute authority over their participation. Bandwidth management for neural data required innovative approaches to compressing and transmitting the complex patterns of neural activity associated with conscious experience. Researchers developed sophisticated models of human consciousness that could identify the essential elements of subjective experience while filtering out neurological noise and irrelevant neural activity. Cross-compatibility standards ensured that neural streaming technology from different manufacturers could work together safely and effectively, preventing market fragmentation while maintaining competitive innovation. These standards covered everything from neural signal encoding to safety protocol implementation, creating unified frameworks for the emerging industry. Regulatory oversight of neural streaming technology involved unprecedented cooperation between neuroscientists, ethicists, technology companies, and government agencies to create comprehensive safety and ethical guidelines. The regulatory frameworks developed during this period balanced innovation with protection of fundamental human rights to mental privacy and cognitive autonomy. Clinical testing of neural streaming systems involved extensive studies of both short-term and long-term effects on users' mental health, cognitive function, and social relationships. These studies established usage guidelines and safety limits that ensured neural streaming could be enjoyed safely while preventing potentially harmful overuse or dependency. Professional training programs for neural streaming technicians created specialized certification processes that ensured technical support personnel had the knowledge and skills necessary to maintain and troubleshoot complex neural interface systems safely. These programs established professional standards that prioritize user safety over technical performance or commercial considerations. Public education campaigns help society understand the capabilities and limitations of neural streaming technology while addressing common misconceptions and fears. These educational efforts were crucial for building the social acceptance and informed usage patterns necessary for successful deployment of neural streaming systems. International cooperation on neural streaming standards ensured that the technology could be developed and deployed safely across different countries and cultures while respecting varying cultural attitudes toward privacy, consciousness, and technology use. These international frameworks prevented regulatory fragmentation while accommodating legitimate cultural differences. Privacy legislation specifically addressing neural data established new categories of protected information and created legal frameworks for the collection, transmission, and storage of neural signals. These laws recognized neural data as fundamentally different from traditional personal information and required correspondingly stronger protections. Research ethics protocols for neural streaming research established guidelines for studying the effects and applications of consciousness sharing technology while protecting research participants from potential harm. These protocols became models for ethical research involving other forms of intimate personal data and experimental technologies. Medical supervision requirements ensured that neural streaming users had access to qualified healthcare providers who could monitor their neurological and psychological health while using neural interface technology. These requirements helped identify and address potential negative effects before they became serious health problems. Insurance and liability frameworks address the complex questions of responsibility and compensation when neural streaming technology caused adverse effects or malfunctioned. These frameworks balance the need to protect users with the necessity of allowing innovation and reasonable business operations in the neural streaming industry. Philosophical and ethical consultation became integral parts of neural streaming development as companies recognized the need for expert guidance on the profound ethical questions raised by consciousness sharing technology. Ethicists, philosophers, and theologians provided crucial input on the implications of neural streaming for human dignity, identity, and spiritual well-being. The comprehensive approach to safety and ethics in neural streaming development established precedents for responsible innovation in other emerging technologies, while demonstrating that even the most intimate and powerful technologies could be developed and deployed safely when appropriate care and oversight were prioritized over speed and profit. The emergence of the first commercial neural experience sharing platforms represented a watershed moment in human communication technology, as the theoretical possibilities of consciousness sharing became practical realities accessible to early adopters and technology enthusiasts. The initial Mindstream services were deliberately limited in scope and carefully monitored, focusing on simple gaming experiences and basic sensory sharing to establish safety records and user acceptance before expanding to more complex forms of experiential transmission. Early adoption patterns for Mindstream technology revealed fascinating demographic and cultural differences in willingness to participate in consciousness sharing. Younger users, particularly those already comfortable with extensive social media sharing, tended to embrace neural streaming more readily, while older demographics approached the technology with greater caution and selectivity about which experiences they were willing to share or receive. Gaming applications dominated the first generation of commercial Mindstream services, as the clear entertainment context and established cultural norms around game streaming provided familiar frameworks for users to understand and evaluate neural experience sharing. Simple games with clear sensory experiences became testing grounds for the technology, while more complex or emotionally intense gaming experiences remained restricted pending further safety research. Quality control systems for early Mindstream services focused heavily on ensuring consistent and safe user experiences, while the technology and user base were still developing. Automated monitoring systems tracked user physiological and psychological responses to identify potentially problematic experiences before they could cause harm, while human moderators provided additional oversight for complex or unusual situations. Pricing models for neural streaming services initially reflected the high costs of the technology and the premium nature of the experiences being offered. Early Mindstream subscriptions were expensive compared to traditional streaming services, limiting initial adoption to affluent early adopters, while companies worked to reduce costs and expand accessibility. Content creator adaptation to neural streaming required significant learning and adjustment as streamers learned to manage not just their visual and audio presentation, but their internal emotional and sensory states for audience consumption. Many traditional streamers found the transition challenging, while others discovered that neural streaming better matched their personalities and communication styles. Platform competition in the early Mindstream market was intense, but carefully regulated to ensure safety standards were maintained across all services. Different platforms specialized in different types of experiences or demographic markets while maintaining interoperability and common safety protocols required by regulatory oversight. User interface design for Mindstream systems needed to balance ease of use with comprehensive safety controls and consent management. Early interfaces were often complex and intimidating to new users, leading to iterative design improvements that gradually made neural streaming more accessible without compromising safety protections. Community formation around early Mindstream platforms reflected both the enhanced intimacy possible through neural sharing and the increased need for trust and mutual respect among community members. The ability to share actual sensory and emotional experiences created deeper connections between streamers and audiences, while also requiring more sophisticated community moderation and conflict resolution mechanisms. Educational applications emerged quickly as educators recognized the potential for neural streaming to revolutionize skill transmission and experiential learning. Early educational Mindstream content included musical performance sharing, artistic creation experiences, and skilled craftsmanship demonstrations that allowed students to experience complex skills directly rather than simply observing them. Therapeutic applications began developing cautiously as mental health professionals explored the potential for controlled neural experience sharing to support therapy and treatment. Initial applications focused on guided meditation, stress relief, and controlled exposure therapy, with extensive medical supervision to ensure patient safety and therapeutic effectiveness. Cultural resistance to neural streaming varied significantly across different societies and communities, with some groups expressing concerns about privacy, human dignity, or spiritual implications of consciousness sharing. These cultural responses influenced platform development and marketing strategies while highlighting the need for culturally sensitive approaches to technology deployment. Technical infrastructure development required massive investments in data processing, transmission, and security systems capable of handling the complex neural data streams generated by large numbers of simultaneous users. Cloud computing advances and specialized neural processing hardware made these systems feasible while maintaining the real-time performance necessary for effective experience sharing. Legal frameworks specific to neural streaming began developing as courts and legislatures grappled with unprecedented questions about liability, consent, privacy, and intellectual property in the context of shared consciousness. These legal developments established precedents that would guide the evolution of neural streaming regulation for years to come. Research and development efforts during the early commercial period focused on expanding the range and quality of shareable experiences while maintaining safety standards. Companies invested heavily in understanding which types of neural signals could be shared safely and effectively, while identifying potential risks and limitations that needed to be addressed. International market differences reflected varying cultural attitudes toward privacy, technology adoption, and regulatory approaches to emerging technologies. Some countries became early leaders in neural streaming adoption, while others maintained more cautious approaches that influenced global development patterns and standards. Celebrity and influencer adoption of neural streaming created high-profile examples of the technology, while establishing cultural norms around appropriate use and professional standards for commercial neural streaming. Early celebrity streamers became important advocates for the technology, while also highlighting potential risks and ethical considerations. Safety monitoring and incident reporting systems tracked user experiences and identified potential problems with neural streaming technology or specific content. These monitoring systems provided crucial data for improving safety protocols while building confidence in the technology among users and regulators. Academic study of early neural streaming experiences provided important insights into the psychological and social effects of consciousness sharing technology. Researchers examined both positive outcomes like increased empathy and understanding and potential negative effects like dependency or identity confusion that needed to be monitored and addressed. The successful launch and early operation of commercial Mindstream services established neural experience sharing as a viable technology while demonstrating that consciousness sharing could be implemented safely and beneficially when appropriate care and oversight were maintained. These early successes provided the foundation for the expanded neural streaming ecosystem that would develop throughout the 2030s. As neural experience sharing matured beyond its initial experimental phase, distinct categories of Mindstream content emerged that reflected both the technical capabilities of consciousness sharing technology and the diverse human needs and interests that neural streaming could serve. The classification and development of these content categories established the framework for the rich ecosystem of experiential sharing that characterizes contemporary Mindstream culture. Gaming experiences remained the most popular category of neural streaming, but evolved far beyond simple gameplay sharing to include sophisticated explorations of virtual worlds, complex problem-solving experiences, and innovative collaborative gameplay that took advantage of the unique possibilities offered by consciousness sharing. Gaming neural streams could transmit not just the visual and auditory aspects of gameplay, but the cognitive processes involved in strategic thinking, the emotional responses to narrative developments, and the physical sensations associated with different gaming interfaces. Creative process sharing emerged as one of the most educationally valuable and culturally significant categories of neural streaming, allowing artists, musicians, writers, and other creative professionals to share their creative experiences directly with audiences interested in understanding creative processes. These streams transmitted the complex mental states involved in creative work, including inspiration, frustration, problem-solving, and the satisfaction of successful creative expression. Educational neural streaming transformed learning by enabling direct transmission of skilled cognitive processes, allowing students to experience not just the results of expert thinking, but the actual mental processes that experts use to solve problems, analyze information, and apply specialized knowledge. Educational neural streams covered everything from mathematical problem solving to medical diagnosis to artistic technique, providing unprecedented access to expert cognitive processes. Meditative and wellness experiences became highly popular categories that used neural streaming to share states of relaxation, mindfulness, and emotional balance. Experienced meditation practitioners could share their mental states with others seeking stress relief or spiritual development, while therapeutic neural streams provided controlled access to positive emotional states and stress reduction experiences. Sensory exploration streams focused on sharing unusual or exceptional sensory experiences that most people would never have the opportunity to access directly. These included everything from extreme sports and adventure activities to specialized professional experiences like surgical procedures or space exploration, allowing audiences to safely experience extraordinary sensations and environments. Cultural immersion experiences used neural streaming to share the perspectives and experiences of people from different cultural backgrounds, providing unprecedented opportunities for cross-cultural understanding and empathy development. These streams could transmit not just intellectual knowledge about different cultures, but the actual experiential understanding of different cultural perspectives and ways of thinking. Memory sharing, one of the most carefully regulated categories, allowed limited sharing of personal memories and past experiences under strict ethical guidelines and consent protocols. These streams were primarily used for educational and therapeutic purposes, such as sharing historical experiences or helping therapy patients process difficult memories with professional guidance. Professional skill demonstration streams enabled experts in various fields to share their professional experiences directly with trainees and colleagues, revolutionizing professional education and skill development. Medical procedures, engineering design processes, and complex technical operations could be experienced directly rather than simply observed, dramatically improving learning outcomes. Therapeutic neural streaming became a specialized category that used controlled consciousness sharing for mental health treatment and emotional healing. Licensed therapists could guide patients through therapeutic experiences while monitoring their neural responses and providing real-time support and intervention when necessary. Collaborative consciousness experiences enabled multiple users to share connected neural experiences, creating group mental states and collective experiences that had no precedent in human history. These collaborative streams required sophisticated technical systems to manage multiple neural connections while maintaining individual autonomy and consent. Artistic performance streams allow performers to share not just their artistic output, but their creative and emotional processes during performance, providing audiences with unprecedented access to the internal experiences of musical, dramatic, and other artistic performances. These streams transformed live performance by adding layers of internal experience to external artistic expression. Scientific research experiences enabled researchers to share their investigative processes and discoveries directly with colleagues and students, accelerating knowledge transfer and collaborative research. Complex scientific thinking and experimental processes could be transmitted directly rather than translated into academic papers or presentations. Philosophical exploration streams created new forms of intellectual discourse by allowing philosophers and deep thinkers to share their contemplative processes directly with others interested in complex philosophical questions. These streams enabled new forms of intellectual collaboration and understanding that transcended traditional linguistic and cultural barriers. Adventure and travel experiences allowed people to share exotic travel experiences and adventurous activities with others who might never have the opportunity to visit remote locations or participate in extreme activities. These streams democratize access to extraordinary experiences while maintaining safety for audiences. Emotional support and empathy experiences provided controlled access to positive emotional states and compassionate perspectives for people dealing with depression, anxiety, or other emotional challenges. These therapeutic streams were carefully managed by mental health professionals to ensure beneficial outcomes. Daily life and mundane experience streams, perhaps surprisingly, became popular among users seeking authentic connections with others and insights into different lifestyle perspectives. These streams shared ordinary experiences like cooking, commuting, or family interactions, providing intimate glimpses into diverse ways of living. Competitive consciousness experiences emerged as a new form of competition where participants competed based on the quality and appeal of their neural streams rather than traditional performance metrics. These competitions created new forms of human achievement based on the ability to generate compelling and shareable conscious experiences. Historical recreation experiences used neural streaming to share carefully researched approximations of historical perspectives and experiences, providing educational tools for understanding different historical periods and cultural contexts. These streams combined historical research with neural experience generation to create immersive educational content. The diversity and sophistication of Mindstream content categories reflected the remarkable range of human experience and the creative potential unlocked by consciousness-sharing technology. Each category developed its own cultural norms, technical requirements, and ethical considerations while contributing to the overall richness of the neural streaming ecosystem that has become integral to contemporary digital culture. The development of economic systems around neural experience sharing created entirely new paradigms for valuing and exchanging human consciousness, raising profound questions about the commodification of mental states while establishing sustainable financial frameworks that could support the complex technological infrastructure required for safe consciousness sharing. The economics of Mindstream services reflected both traditional entertainment industry models and innovative approaches to valuing intimate personal experiences. Subscription models for neural streaming services evolved to accommodate the wide range of user preferences and engagement levels while maintaining the high-quality technical infrastructure necessary for safe consciousness sharing. Premium subscription tiers provided access to more sophisticated experiences, longer session durations, and exclusive content from popular streamers, while basic tiers offered limited access designed to introduce new users to neural streaming experiences. Revenue-sharing arrangements between platforms and content creators became more complex than traditional streaming services due to the intimate nature of neural content and the significant technical and safety infrastructure required to support consciousness sharing. Neural streamers typically received higher revenue percentages than traditional content creators to compensate for the personal nature of their shared experiences and the specialized skills required for effective neural streaming. Dynamic pricing systems emerged that could adjust the cost of neural experiences based on demand, content quality, and the streamer's expertise and popularity. These systems recognized that different types of neural experiences had different values to audiences, and that pricing should reflect both market demand and the personal cost to streamers of sharing intimate mental experiences. Tipping and direct support mechanisms evolved beyond traditional monetary donations to include new forms of appreciation and support that recognized the unique nature of neural content creation. Emotional support systems allowed audiences to send positive emotional feedback directly to streamers, while experience gifts enabled supporters to share their own positive experiences with streamers they appreciated. Corporate sponsorship of neural streaming required careful consideration of ethical boundaries around the commercialization of consciousness while providing necessary funding for platform development and content creation. Sponsored neural experiences needed to maintain authenticity while incorporating commercial elements in ways that didn't compromise the integrity of shared consciousness or violate user trust. Educational licensing created new revenue streams for neural streamers who could provide valuable learning experiences through consciousness sharing. Educational institutions, training programs, and professional development organizations began purchasing licenses for neural experiences that could enhance their educational offerings while providing fair compensation to expert streamers. Therapeutic application licensing established frameworks for mental health professionals to use neural streaming content for therapeutic purposes, while ensuring appropriate compensation for streamers and maintaining ethical standards for therapeutic applications. These licensing arrangements require careful coordination between healthcare systems, neural streaming platforms, and content creators. Insurance and liability considerations for neural streaming economics address the complex questions of financial responsibility when consciousness sharing experiences caused adverse effects or failed to meet user expectations. Specialized insurance products emerged to protect both streamers and platforms while providing recourse for users who experienced negative outcomes from neural streaming. Intellectual property frameworks for neural experiences grappled with unprecedented questions about ownership and protection of shared consciousness content. Legal systems needed to develop new approaches to protecting streamers' intellectual property while enabling appropriate use and distribution of neural experiences across different platforms and applications. International taxation of neural streaming revenue created complex challenges as consciousness-sharing services operated across national boundaries while generating income that was difficult to categorize under traditional tax systems. New international agreements emerged to address tax obligations for neural streaming while preventing double taxation and ensuring fair revenue collection. Labor protections for neural streamers addressed unique workplace concerns related to the mental and emotional demands of consciousness-sharing work. Professional standards and labor regulations developed specifically for neural streaming recognized the intimate nature of the work while ensuring fair working conditions and protection from exploitation. Market valuation of neural streaming companies required new approaches to assessing the value of platforms and technologies that dealt with consciousness sharing rather than traditional digital content. Investment frameworks needed to account for the unique technical, regulatory, and ethical challenges associated with neural streaming while evaluating commercial potential. Consumer protection regulations for neural streaming economics address pricing transparency, contract clarity, and recourse mechanisms for users who felt they had been treated unfairly by neural streaming services. These protections were particularly important given the intimate nature of neural experiences and the potential for emotional manipulation in marketing and sales. Micropayment systems for neural streaming enabled more granular and flexible payment options that could better match the diverse ways users wanted to engage with consciousness-sharing content. Users could pay for specific experiences, time-based access, or particular types of neural content without committing to full subscription services. Platform competition. Economics in neural streaming balanced the benefits of market competition with the need for safety standards and interoperability across different services. Regulatory frameworks prevented monopolistic practices while ensuring that competitive pressures didn't compromise user safety or privacy protections. Economic research on neural streaming examined the broader economic impacts of consciousness-sharing technology on traditional entertainment industries, educational services, and therapeutic markets. Studies evaluated both the disruptive effects of neural streaming and the new economic opportunities created by consciousness-sharing technology. Charity and social impact applications of neural streaming economics explored how consciousness sharing could be used for fundraising and social causes while maintaining ethical standards around the commercialization of human experience. Charitable neural streaming events became popular ways to combine entertainment with social impact while demonstrating positive applications of consciousness-sharing technology. Economic accessibility initiatives worked to ensure that neural streaming technology remained available to users regardless of economic circumstances while maintaining the quality and safety standards necessary for beneficial consciousness sharing. These initiatives included subsidized access programs, reduced-cost hardware options, and free educational neural streaming content. The economic frameworks developed for neural streaming establish precedents for valuing and exchanging intimate personal experiences while maintaining ethical standards and safety protections. These systems demonstrated that consciousness sharing could be commercially viable while respecting human dignity and autonomy, creating sustainable economic models for the continued development and deployment of neural streaming technology. The fundamental tension between the openness required for meaningful consciousness sharing and the essential human need for mental privacy created complex challenges that required innovative technological solutions and careful ethical consideration. The development of privacy protection systems for neural streaming represented one of the most sophisticated applications of privacy technology ever created, establishing new paradigms for protecting personal information while enabling beneficial sharing of human experience. Mental privacy rights emerged as a new category of fundamental human rights that require protection even within the context of voluntary consciousness sharing. Legal and ethical frameworks recognized that certain aspects of human consciousness needed to remain absolutely private, regardless of user consent, establishing inviolable boundaries around core personality, deep memories, and unconscious mental processes. Selective sharing technology enabled neural streamers to control precisely which aspects of their conscious experience were transmitted to audiences, while maintaining absolute privacy over sensitive or personal mental content. These systems required sophisticated real-time analysis of neural signals to identify and filter shareable content while protecting private thoughts and experiences. Consent granularity systems allowed users to provide detailed, specific consent for different types of consciousness sharing, while maintaining the ability to withdraw consent for particular aspects of their experience at any time. These systems ensured that neural streaming consent could be as precise and conditional as the complex nature of human consciousness required. Temporal privacy controls enabled neural streamers to designate certain time periods or mental states as permanently private, ensuring that particularly sensitive experiences could never be shared even accidentally. These controls provided additional layers of protection for streamers who needed absolute confidence that certain aspects of their experience would remain private. Anonymization and identity protection systems enabled consciousness sharing while protecting streamers' personal identities and private information. Advanced anonymization techniques could share authentic experiential content while preventing audiences from identifying specific individuals or accessing information that could compromise streamer privacy. Mental firewall technology created protective barriers around sensitive areas of consciousness while enabling sharing of appropriate experiential content. These systems represented sophisticated applications of cybersecurity principles to protecting human consciousness from unwanted intrusion or manipulation during neural streaming sessions. Audience privacy protections ensured that neural streaming audiences were also protected from unwanted exposure to potentially harmful or inappropriate conscious content. Filtering systems could identify and block problematic content, while content rating systems helped users make informed decisions about their exposure to different types of neural experiences. Data sovereignty frameworks for neural streaming established user rights over their consciousness data while enabling platform operations and content sharing. These frameworks ensured that users maintain control over their neural data while enabling the technical operations necessary for effective consciousness sharing services. Encryption and security systems for neural streaming protected consciousness data during transmission and storage, while maintaining the real-time performance necessary for effective experience sharing. Advanced encryption techniques specifically designed for neural data ensured that consciousness sharing could occur safely over public networks. Regulatory oversight of neural streaming privacy involved unprecedented cooperation between privacy advocates, neuroscientists, technology companies, and government agencies to create comprehensive protection frameworks. These regulatory systems balanced innovation with fundamental privacy rights while establishing enforcement mechanisms for privacy violations. Cross-border privacy coordination addressed the complex challenges of protecting neural streaming privacy across different national privacy regimes and cultural attitudes toward consciousness sharing. International agreements established minimum privacy standards while allowing for cultural differences in privacy expectations and technological regulation. Privacy education and user awareness programs help neural streaming users understand their privacy rights and the implications of consciousness sharing while making informed decisions about their participation in neural streaming. These educational efforts were crucial for ensuring that user consent was truly informed and voluntary. Technical auditing and verification systems provided independent validation that neural streaming platforms were implementing privacy protections correctly and maintaining the security of user consciousness data. These auditing systems created accountability mechanisms that helped maintain user trust in neural streaming technology. Incident response protocols for privacy breaches established procedures for identifying, containing, and addressing privacy violations in neural streaming systems while minimizing harm to affected users. These protocols recognized that privacy breaches in consciousness sharing could be particularly harmful and required specialized response approaches. Long-term privacy considerations address the challenges of protecting neural streaming data over extended time periods as technology evolved and platform ownership changed. Data retention policies and deletion requirements ensured that consciousness data couldn't be used inappropriately years after it was originally shared. Child protection frameworks for neural streaming established special privacy protections for minors while enabling age-appropriate consciousness sharing experiences. These frameworks recognized that children needed additional privacy protections while ensuring they could benefit from educational and developmental applications of neural streaming. Employee privacy protections for neural streaming platforms ensured that workers in the consciousness sharing industry were protected from inappropriate exposure to user neural data or pressure to share their own experiences. Professional standards and ethical guidelines protected workers while maintaining service quality. Privacy impact assessment requirements for neural streaming platforms ensured that new features and services were evaluated for privacy implications before deployment. These assessments required platforms to demonstrate that privacy protections were maintained even as consciousness sharing technology evolved and expanded. Research privacy protections enabled beneficial research on consciousness sharing while protecting participant privacy and preventing misuse of research data. Ethical research frameworks established guidelines for studying neural streaming while maintaining participant rights and research integrity. The privacy protection systems developed for neural streaming demonstrated that even the most intimate forms of technology could be designed and operated with respect for fundamental privacy rights while enabling beneficial sharing of human experience. These systems established precedents for privacy protection in other emerging technologies, while proving that consciousness sharing could be both meaningful and private when appropriate care and attention were dedicated to protecting user rights and autonomy. The widespread adoption of neural experience sharing fundamentally altered human psychological development and social interaction patterns in ways that required extensive research and careful consideration by mental health professionals, educators, and policymakers. The ability to directly experience others' consciousness created unprecedented opportunities for empathy development and understanding, while also raising concerns about identity formation, authentic experience, and psychological dependency that needed to be carefully studied and addressed. Empathy enhancement through neural streaming became one of the most significant positive psychological effects of consciousness sharing technology. Research demonstrated that people who regularly experienced neural streams from individuals with different backgrounds, abilities, and perspectives developed significantly increased capacity for understanding and relating to others' experiences. This empathy enhancement appeared to be lasting and transferable to real-world social interactions. Identity formation in the neural streaming era faced new challenges as young people had access to a vast range of consciousness experiences that could influence their own psychological development and sense of self. Mental health professionals needed to develop new approaches to supporting healthy identity formation, while young people navigated the complex relationship between their own consciousness and the shared experiences available through neural streaming. Addiction potential and dependency concerns emerged as some users began spending excessive amounts of time consuming neural experiences rather than engaging with their own lives and relationships. Mental health professionals developed new diagnostic criteria and treatment approaches for neural streaming dependency, while platforms implemented usage monitoring and intervention systems to prevent problematic use. Authenticity questions arose as neural streaming became more prevalent and sophisticated, raising concerns about whether people might prefer vicarious experiences over authentic personal experiences, and how this preference might affect psychological development and life satisfaction. Research examined the relationship between neural streaming consumption and engagement with direct, unmediated experience. Therapeutic applications of neural streaming demonstrated significant potential for treating various mental health conditions through controlled exposure to positive mental states and experiences. Carefully managed therapeutic neural streaming could provide access to emotional states and cognitive perspectives that supported healing and psychological growth, while avoiding the risks associated with recreational neural streaming. Social skill development was both enhanced and potentially impaired by neural streaming, as people could experience sophisticated social interactions through consciousness sharing while possibly reducing their motivation to develop these skills through direct personal interaction. Mental health professionals needed to evaluate how neural streaming affected social development and provide guidance for balanced use. Emotional regulation became more complex in the neural streaming era as people had access to external emotional experiences that could either support or disrupt their own emotional stability. Research examined how neural streaming affected natural emotional regulation while developing guidelines for using consciousness sharing to support rather than undermine emotional health. Cognitive development research examined how access to diverse consciousness experiences through neural streaming affected learning, problem-solving, and intellectual development. Studies suggested both potential benefits from exposure to expert cognitive processes and possible risks from reduced emphasis on developing independent thinking skills. Reality perception and grounding became important considerations as extensive neural streaming use could potentially affect users' ability to distinguish between their own experiences and vicarious experiences accessed through consciousness sharing. Mental health professionals developed assessment tools and intervention strategies to maintain healthy reality perception in regular neural streaming users. Relationship formation and maintenance faced new challenges as neural streaming provided alternative forms of intimacy and connection that could either supplement or potentially replace traditional interpersonal relationships. Research examined how consciousness sharing affected romantic relationships, friendships, and family dynamics while developing guidelines for healthy integration of neural streaming into social life. Depression and anxiety treatment through neural streaming showed promising results as controlled access to positive mental states could provide relief for individuals struggling with mood disorders. Therapeutic protocols were developed that used consciousness sharing as an adjunct to traditional mental health treatment while maintaining safety and ethical standards. Creativity and artistic development could be both enhanced and potentially inhibited by neural streaming, as artists gained access to diverse creative experiences while possibly becoming dependent on external inspiration rather than developing their own creative processes. Research examined how consciousness sharing affected artistic development and creative independence. Educational psychology applications of neural streaming demonstrated significant potential for accelerating learning and skill development through direct access to expert cognitive processes. Educational psychologists developed new pedagogical approaches that integrated consciousness sharing with traditional learning methods while ensuring balanced cognitive development. Personality development research examined how extensive exposure to diverse consciousness experiences might affect personality formation and stability. Studies suggested that neural streaming could either promote psychological flexibility and growth or potentially create confusion and instability depending on usage patterns and individual psychological factors. Cultural psychology considerations addressed how neural streaming might affect cultural identity and tradition transmission as people gained access to consciousness experiences from diverse cultural backgrounds. Research examined both the potential for increased cross-cultural understanding and concerns about cultural homogenization or appropriation. Childhood development in the neural streaming era required special consideration as young people growing up with access to consciousness sharing technology might develop different psychological patterns than previous generations. Developmental psychologists studied how to optimize the benefits of neural streaming for children while protecting healthy psychological development. Workplace psychology applications of neural streaming created new possibilities for training, collaboration, and skill development while raising questions about privacy, autonomy, and authentic professional development. Organizational psychologists developed frameworks for beneficial workplace use of consciousness sharing while protecting employees' psychological well-being. Aging and neural streaming research examined how consciousness sharing technology might affect cognitive aging and psychological well-being in older adults. Studies suggested potential benefits for maintaining cognitive flexibility and social connection while identifying risks that needed to be managed through appropriate usage guidelines. Crisis intervention and suicide prevention applications of neural streaming provided new tools for mental health professionals, while requiring careful protocols to prevent misuse or harmful exposure. Emergency mental health services began incorporating consciousness sharing technology to provide immediate support and intervention for individuals in psychological crisis. The comprehensive psychological research on neural streaming established evidence-based guidelines for healthy consciousness sharing while identifying both the remarkable therapeutic potential and the significant risks that needed to be managed through careful regulation, professional oversight, and user education. This research demonstrated that consciousness sharing could enhance human psychological well-being when used appropriately while requiring ongoing vigilance to prevent harmful applications or excessive dependency. The introduction of neural experience sharing technology generated profound cultural, religious, and philosophical debates that reflected fundamental disagreements about human nature, personal privacy, spiritual beliefs, and the appropriate relationship between technology and consciousness. These debates shaped the development and regulation of neural streaming while revealing deep cultural divisions about the meaning and value of authentic human experience. Religious perspectives on consciousness sharing vary dramatically across different faith traditions and denominations, creating complex theological discussions about the nature of consciousness, the soul, and appropriate uses of technology for sharing mental experiences. Some religious groups embraced neural streaming as a tool for spiritual development and compassionate understanding, while others viewed consciousness sharing as a violation of divine intention or spiritual integrity. Traditional cultural resistance to neural streaming emerged in communities that value privacy, individual autonomy, and direct personal experience over technologically mediated forms of connection and understanding. These communities raised important questions about whether consciousness sharing enhanced or diminished authentic human relationships and cultural transmission. Generational differences in acceptance of neural streaming reflected broader patterns of technology adoption, while highlighting specific concerns about privacy, authenticity, and the nature of personal experience. Older generations often expressed skepticism about consciousness sharing, while younger people were more likely to embrace neural streaming as a natural extension of digital communication and social interaction. Philosophical debates about personal identity and authenticity intensified with the advent of consciousness sharing as philosophers grappled with questions about whether vicarious experiences through neural streaming could be considered genuinely personal experiences, and how consciousness sharing might affect individual identity formation and authentic self-development. Educational institution responses to neural streaming varied significantly as schools and universities struggled to integrate consciousness sharing technology with traditional educational approaches, while addressing concerns about academic integrity, authentic learning, and equitable access to neural streaming resources. Professional ethics discussions emerged across multiple fields as professions grappled with appropriate uses of consciousness sharing for training, collaboration, and service delivery, while maintaining professional standards and protecting client privacy and autonomy. Legal system adaptation to consciousness sharing required courts and legal professionals to address unprecedented questions about consent, privacy, liability, and evidence in cases involving neural streaming technology. Legal precedents needed to be established for situations where consciousness sharing was involved in crimes, contracts, or civil disputes. International cultural diplomacy around neural streaming addressed concerns about cultural imperialism and the preservation of diverse cultural perspectives in an era when consciousness sharing could potentially homogenize human experience. International organizations worked to ensure that neural streaming supported rather than undermined cultural diversity and local traditions. Medical ethics considerations for therapeutic neural streaming required healthcare professionals to develop new ethical frameworks for using consciousness sharing in treatment while maintaining patient autonomy, informed consent, and therapeutic benefit. Medical organizations established guidelines for appropriate therapeutic applications of neural streaming. Disability rights perspectives on neural streaming raised important questions about accessibility, representation, and the potential for consciousness sharing to either enhance understanding of disability experiences or perpetuate harmful stereotypes and misconceptions. Disability advocates work to ensure that neural streaming served the disability community appropriately. Corporate responsibility frameworks for neural streaming platforms address company obligations to users, society, and various stakeholder groups while balancing commercial interests with ethical considerations. Industry organizations developed codes of conduct and best practices for responsible operation of consciousness sharing services. Media representation of neural streaming influenced public understanding and acceptance of consciousness sharing technology while sometimes perpetuating misconceptions or exaggerated fears about the capabilities and risks of neural streaming. Media literacy efforts work to promote accurate understanding of consciousness sharing technology. Academic freedom and research ethics discussions address the appropriate use of neural streaming for research purposes while protecting participant rights and maintaining research integrity. Academic institutions developed policies for neural streaming research that balanced scientific advancement with ethical responsibility. Privacy advocacy responses to neural streaming focused on protecting fundamental rights to mental privacy while supporting beneficial applications of consciousness sharing technology. Privacy organizations worked to ensure that neural streaming regulation adequately protected user rights while enabling innovation. Environmental and sustainability considerations for neural streaming address the significant energy and resource requirements of consciousness sharing technology while exploring ways to minimize environmental impact. Environmental groups advocated for sustainable approaches to neural streaming infrastructure and operations. Labor organizing and workers' rights in the neural streaming industry addressed unique concerns about the commercialization of consciousness and the working conditions for people whose jobs involved sharing their mental experiences. Labor organizations developed new approaches to protecting neural streaming workers while supporting fair compensation and working conditions. Parental rights and child protection debates around neural streaming focused on appropriate parental control over children's access to consciousness sharing while respecting children's rights to education and social development. Family advocacy groups work to develop guidelines for family use of neural streaming technology. Economic justice considerations for neural streaming addressed concerns about equitable access to consciousness sharing technology and the potential for neural streaming to exacerbate existing inequalities. Social justice organizations advocated for policies that would ensure broad access to beneficial applications of consciousness sharing. Scientific research integrity in neural streaming studies required new approaches to research design, peer review, and publication that could maintain scientific standards while addressing the unique challenges of studying consciousness sharing technology. Scientific organizations developed new standards for neural streaming research. The ongoing cultural and ethical debates surrounding neural streaming reflected the profound implications of consciousness sharing technology for human society, while demonstrating the importance of inclusive dialogue and careful consideration of diverse perspectives in developing and regulating emerging technologies. These debates continue to shape the evolution of neural streaming while ensuring that consciousness sharing technology developed in ways that respected human dignity and cultural diversity. As we reach the midpoint of our exploration of the evolution from traditional streaming to neural experience sharing, it becomes essential to pause and assess the profound transformation that has reshaped human communication, entertainment, and social connection. The decade-long journey from simple screen broadcasting to direct consciousness sharing represents one of the most significant changes in human interaction since the development of language itself, with implications that extend far beyond technology into the fundamental nature of human experience and community. The quantitative transformation of the streaming industry reflects the magnitude of this change, with neural streaming platforms now serving over 2 billion users worldwide and generating economic activity that exceeds the combined value of traditional entertainment industries. The technical infrastructure supporting consciousness sharing requires computational resources that dwarf previous digital communication systems, while maintaining the real-time performance and safety standards necessary for beneficial neural experience transmission. The qualitative changes in human connection enabled by neural streaming have proven even more significant than the technological achievements, as consciousness sharing has fundamentally altered how people understand empathy, learning, and social relationship formation. Research indicates that regular neural streaming users develop enhanced capacities for understanding diverse perspectives and experiences, while maintaining their individual identity and autonomy when appropriate usage guidelines are followed. The educational transformation facilitated by neural streaming has revolutionized learning across all age groups and subject areas, enabling direct transmission of expert knowledge and skills while preserving the importance of personal intellectual development and critical thinking. Educational institutions have successfully integrated consciousness sharing with traditional pedagogical approaches, creating hybrid learning environments that optimize both direct knowledge transmission and independent intellectual growth. The therapeutic applications of neural streaming have provided mental health professionals with unprecedented tools for treatment and support, while establishing new standards for ethical practice and patient protection in consciousness-based therapy. Clinical research has demonstrated significant benefits for various mental health conditions when neural streaming is used appropriately within professional therapeutic frameworks. The economic implications of the transition to neural streaming have created entirely new industries and employment categories while transforming existing entertainment and communication sectors. The development of sustainable economic models for consciousness sharing has demonstrated that intimate personal experiences can be monetized ethically while maintaining respect for human dignity and appropriate compensation for consciousness sharing work. The regulatory and legal frameworks that have emerged around neural streaming represent innovative approaches to governing emerging technologies while protecting fundamental human rights to privacy, autonomy, and mental integrity. International cooperation on neural streaming standards has established precedents for technological governance that balance innovation with human welfare considerations. The cultural adaptation to neural streaming has varied significantly across different societies and communities, creating a rich diversity of approaches to consciousness sharing that reflects local values and traditions, while enabling global communication and understanding. The successful preservation of cultural diversity within the global neural streaming ecosystem demonstrates that consciousness sharing can enhance rather than diminish cultural richness and local identity. The psychological research on neural streaming has provided crucial insights into human consciousness, empathy development, and social cognition, while identifying both the benefits and risks associated with consciousness sharing technology. Mental health professionals have developed effective approaches to preventing problematic neural streaming use while maximizing the therapeutic and developmental benefits of appropriate consciousness sharing. The privacy and security innovations required for safe neural streaming have advanced the field of digital privacy protection while establishing new standards for protecting intimate personal information. The technical solutions developed for neural streaming privacy have found applications in other technologies requiring protection of sensitive personal data. The social transformation enabled by neural streaming has created new forms of community and social organization, while preserving essential aspects of traditional human relationships and social structures. The integration of consciousness sharing with existing social institutions has demonstrated that technological advancement can enhance rather than replace fundamental human social needs. However, the transition to neural streaming has also revealed ongoing challenges that require continued attention and innovation. Questions about authentic experience, healthy technology use, equitable access, and long-term psychological effects continue to require research and policy development as consciousness-sharing technology becomes more sophisticated and widespread. The generational differences in neural streaming adoption and use reflect broader patterns of technological adaptation while highlighting the need for educational and support systems that can help all age groups benefit from consciousness sharing while avoiding potential risks. Intergenerational dialogue and knowledge sharing have become crucial for ensuring that neural streaming serves all members of society appropriately. The international coordination required for effective neural streaming governance has created new models for global technological cooperation while respecting national sovereignty and cultural differences. The success of international neural streaming standards demonstrates the possibility of global governance frameworks for emerging technologies that protect human welfare while enabling beneficial innovation. The preservation of human agency and autonomy within neural streaming systems has required careful attention to system design and user interface development while maintaining the effectiveness and appeal of consciousness sharing experiences. The balance achieved between technological capability and human control provides a model for other emerging technologies that interact intimately with human consciousness and decision-making. As we continue our exploration of the contemporary neural streaming landscape and its implications for the future, the transformation achieved by 2035 provides compelling evidence that consciousness-sharing technology can be developed and deployed in ways that enhance human welfare, understanding, and connection, while preserving essential aspects of privacy, autonomy, and authentic experience. The success of the transition from traditional streaming to neural experience sharing demonstrates humanity's capacity to adapt beneficial emerging technologies while maintaining core values and addressing legitimate concerns through careful research, regulation, and social dialogue. This achievement provides hope and guidance for addressing other emerging technologies that will continue to transform human experience and social organization in the decades ahead. The sophisticated technical infrastructure that supports contemporary neural streaming represents one of the most complex and carefully engineered technological systems ever created, requiring unprecedented integration of neuroscience, computer science, network engineering, and cybersecurity to enable safe and effective consciousness sharing at global scale. The technical architecture of Mindstream systems reflects years of iterative development guided by safety requirements, performance optimization, and user experience considerations. Neural signal processing systems form the foundation of consciousness sharing technology, utilizing advanced algorithms that can identify, filter, and transmit the specific neural patterns associated with conscious experience while maintaining absolute protection for private thoughts and sensitive mental content. These processing systems operate in real time with latencies measured in milliseconds to ensure that shared experiences feel natural and immediate to both streamers and audiences. Bandwidth optimization for neural data transmission required revolutionary approaches to data compression and network utilization, as consciousness sharing generates vastly more complex data streams than traditional audiovisual content. Advanced compression algorithms can reduce neural data transmission requirements by over 95%, while preserving the essential experiential content that makes consciousness sharing meaningful and engaging. Distributed computing architecture enables neural streaming platforms to process the enormous computational requirements of consciousness sharing while maintaining the real-time performance necessary for effective user experience. Cloud-based neural processing systems utilize specialized hardware and software optimized for the unique characteristics of consciousness data, processing, and transmission. Security infrastructure for neural streaming incorporates multiple layers of protection designed specifically for the unique vulnerabilities and requirements of consciousness data. Advanced encryption methods protect neural signals during transmission, while intrusion detection systems monitor for any attempts to access or manipulate consciousness data inappropriately. Quality assurance systems for neural streaming utilize sophisticated monitoring and analysis tools that can assess the integrity and safety of consciousness sharing in real time while identifying potential technical problems or safety concerns before they affect user experience. These systems include both automated monitoring and human oversight to ensure comprehensive protection. Interoperability standards enable neural streaming systems from different manufacturers and platforms to work together safely and effectively while maintaining competitive innovation and user choice. These standards cover everything from neural signal encoding to safety protocol implementation, creating unified frameworks for the neural streaming industry. User interface design for neural streaming systems balances ease of use with comprehensive safety controls and consent management, enabling users to engage with consciousness sharing technology confidently while maintaining full control over their participation and privacy. Advanced interface systems can adapt to individual user preferences and needs while maintaining consistent safety standards. Hardware infrastructure for neural streaming includes both the neural interface devices worn by users and the network and computing infrastructure required to support consciousness sharing services. Consumer neural interfaces have evolved to be comfortable, reliable, and minimally invasive while providing high-quality neural signal capture and transmission capabilities. Data storage and management systems for neural streaming address the complex challenges of storing and managing consciousness data while protecting user privacy and maintaining appropriate access controls. Advanced storage systems can maintain neural data integrity over long periods while enabling authorized access for legitimate purposes such as content delivery and research. Network infrastructure optimization ensures that neural streaming services can operate effectively over existing internet infrastructure while maintaining the performance and reliability standards necessary for safe consciousness sharing. Content delivery networks specifically designed for neural data help minimize latency and ensure consistent user experience across different geographic regions. Scalability architecture enables neural streaming platforms to serve millions of simultaneous users while maintaining individual user experience, quality, and safety standards. Advanced load balancing and resource allocation systems ensure that increased usage doesn't compromise system performance or safety protections. Integration APIs enable third-party developers and services to create applications that work with neural streaming platforms while maintaining appropriate security and privacy protections. These integration capabilities support the development of educational, therapeutic, and creative applications that utilize consciousness-sharing technology. Monitoring and analytics systems provide platform operators with comprehensive insights into system performance, user safety, and service quality while protecting individual user privacy and maintaining appropriate confidentiality. These systems enable continuous improvement of neural streaming services while ensuring user protection. Backup and disaster recovery systems ensure that neural streaming services can continue operating even in the event of technical failures or other disruptions while protecting user data and maintaining safety standards. Advanced redundancy and failover systems provide multiple layers of protection against service interruptions. Research infrastructure enables academic and commercial researchers to study neural streaming technology and its effects while maintaining appropriate ethical standards and user protections. Research platforms provide controlled environments for studying consciousness, sharing while protecting participant privacy and safety. Regulatory compliance systems ensure that neural streaming platforms meet all applicable legal and regulatory requirements across different jurisdictions while maintaining consistent user protection standards. Automated compliance monitoring helps platforms maintain regulatory compliance while enabling global operation. Performance optimization systems continuously monitor and improve neural streaming performance while maintaining safety and privacy standards. Advanced analytics and machine learning systems identify opportunities for performance improvement while ensuring that optimizations don't compromise user protection. Accessibility features ensure that neural streaming technology can be used effectively by individuals with different abilities and needs while maintaining consistent safety and privacy protections. Universal design principles guide the development of neural streaming systems that serve diverse user populations effectively. Environmental sustainability measures address the significant energy and resource requirements of neural streaming infrastructure while working to minimize environmental impact. Renewable energy systems, efficient hardware design, and optimized software help reduce the environmental footprint of consciousness sharing technology. The technical infrastructure supporting contemporary neural streaming demonstrates that even the most complex and intimate technologies can be engineered to operate safely and effectively at global scale when appropriate attention is paid to safety, privacy, and user welfare. The sophisticated systems that enable consciousness sharing provide models for other emerging technologies that require similar levels of technical complexity and user protection. Future technical development continues to focus on improving performance, safety, and accessibility while reducing costs and environmental impact, ensuring that consciousness sharing technology will continue to evolve in ways that serve human welfare and enable beneficial applications of neural streaming technology. The advent of neural experience sharing has fundamentally transformed celebrity culture and public influence, creating entirely new categories of famous individuals whose prominence derives not from traditional talents or achievements, but from their ability to generate compelling consciousness experiences that audiences find valuable, entertaining, or meaningful. The evolution of celebrity in the Mindstream era reflects broader changes in how society values authenticity, intimacy, and shared human experience. Neural streaming celebrities emerged as individuals who possess particularly engaging, insightful, or emotionally resonant consciousness experiences that translated effectively into shared neural content. Unlike traditional celebrities whose fame derived from external achievements or performances, Mindstream celebrities became famous for the quality and appeal of their internal experiences and their ability to share these experiences meaningfully with audiences. Authenticity standards for neural streaming celebrities required unprecedented levels of genuine personal sharing while maintaining appropriate boundaries and privacy protections. Audiences developed sophisticated abilities to detect artificial or manipulated consciousness experiences, creating pressure for neural celebrities to maintain genuine authenticity while managing the psychological challenges of constant consciousness exposure. Parasocial relationships in the neural streaming era became more intense and complex as audiences could directly experience aspects of celebrities' consciousness rather than simply observing their external behavior and statements. Mental health professionals needed to develop new approaches to supporting both celebrities and fans in managing these intensified parasocial connections appropriately. Celebrity management and representation evolved to address the unique challenges of managing careers built around consciousness sharing, including privacy protection, mental health support, and authentic personal brand development. Professional services for neural streaming celebrities included specialized therapists, privacy consultants, and experienced curators who could help celebrities maintain healthy careers while protecting their psychological well-being. Privacy boundaries for neural celebrities became complex negotiations between audience demand for intimate access and celebrities' needs for mental privacy and personal autonomy. Successful neural celebrities learned to share meaningful aspects of their consciousness while maintaining essential private mental spaces that remain protected from public exposure. Content creation strategies for neural streaming celebrities involved careful curation of consciousness experiences to provide valuable content while maintaining personal authenticity and psychological health. Celebrity streamers developed skills in emotional regulation, experience design, and consciousness presentation that had no precedent in traditional celebrity culture. Fan culture evolution in the neural streaming era reflected the increased intimacy possible through consciousness sharing, while requiring new forms of respectful engagement and boundary recognition. Fan communities developed more sophisticated understanding of consent and privacy while maintaining enthusiastic support for their favorite neural streaming celebrities. Celebrity mental health support became a crucial specialized field as the psychological demands of consciousness sharing fame required new forms of professional support and intervention. Mental health professionals specializing in neural celebrity care developed expertise in the unique psychological challenges associated with consciousness sharing careers. Brand partnerships and sponsorships for neural celebrities required careful consideration of authenticity and audience trust, as commercial relationships needed to be integrated with consciousness sharing in ways that didn't compromise the genuine personal experiences that formed the foundation of neural celebrity appeal. Celebrity activism and social influence through neural streaming enabled new forms of advocacy and social change as celebrities could share not just their opinions but their actual experiences and emotional responses to social issues. This enhanced form of influence required new standards for responsible use of celebrity platforms and consciousness sharing capabilities. International neural celebrity culture reflected diverse cultural attitudes toward privacy, consciousness sharing, and celebrity while creating global platforms for cross-cultural influence and understanding. Neural celebrities from different cultural backgrounds could share their perspectives directly through consciousness rather than relying on translation or interpretation. Career longevity for neural celebrities faced unique challenges as the psychological demands of consciousness sharing could lead to burnout or mental health issues that might end careers prematurely. Industry standards and support systems developed to help neural celebrities maintain sustainable careers while protecting their long-term psychological well-being. Celebrity privacy protection technology enabled neural streaming celebrities to maintain some private mental space while continuing their consciousness sharing careers. Advanced filtering and privacy systems allowed celebrities to share meaningful experiences while protecting sensitive personal information and private thoughts. Talent development and training for aspiring neural celebrities included education in consciousness, sharing techniques, mental health maintenance, and audience engagement while preparing individuals for the unique demands and opportunities of neural streaming fame. Celebrity collaboration and joint consciousness experiences created new forms of entertainment and social commentary as multiple celebrities could share connected neural experiences with audiences. These collaborative experiences required sophisticated technical coordination and mutual trust among participating celebrities. Legacy and historical preservation of neural celebrity content addressed the challenge of maintaining access to consciousness experiences that represented significant cultural achievements or historical documentation. Cultural institutions developed specialized approaches to preserving and presenting neural celebrity content for future study and appreciation. Celebrity ethics and responsibility frameworks established guidelines for appropriate use of consciousness, sharing platforms and influence, while protecting both celebrities and audiences from potential harm. Professional organizations for neural celebrities developed codes of conduct and best practices for responsible consciousness sharing. Economic models for neural celebrity careers created new approaches to valuing and compensating consciousness sharing work, while ensuring sustainable career development and appropriate protection for celebrity mental health and privacy. Revenue sharing, licensing, and appearance fee structures adapted to the unique nature of consciousness sharing content. Celebrity education and awareness programs helped neural streaming celebrities understand their responsibilities and opportunities, while providing resources for maintaining healthy careers and positive social influence. Educational initiatives address both the technical aspects of consciousness sharing and the social responsibilities that came with neural celebrity status. The transformation of celebrity culture in the neural streaming era demonstrated how consciousness sharing technology could create new forms of human connection and influence while requiring careful attention to authenticity, mental health, and social responsibility. The evolution of celebrity in the Mindstream age provided insights into how intimate technologies could be integrated with public culture while maintaining appropriate boundaries and protections for all participants. The integration of neural experience sharing into educational systems has created the most significant transformation in learning since the development of writing. Enabling students to directly access expert knowledge, skills, and cognitive processes while maintaining the importance of personal intellectual development and critical thinking. Educational applications of consciousness sharing have revolutionized everything from professional training to early childhood development, while establishing new pedagogical frameworks that balance experiential learning with traditional educational approaches. Direct skill transmission through neural streaming has accelerated learning in technical and professional fields by allowing students to experience expert cognitive processes directly, rather than relying solely on observation and explanation. Medical students can experience surgical procedures from expert surgeons' perspectives, while engineering students can access the problem-solving processes of experienced engineers, dramatically reducing the time required to develop professional competence. Cognitive apprenticeship models enabled by neural streaming create new forms of mentorship where students can directly experience expert thinking patterns while gradually developing their own independent cognitive capabilities. These models preserve the traditional benefits of apprenticeship relationships while adding unprecedented access to internal mental processes that were previously impossible to share directly. Personalized learning experiences through consciousness sharing allow educators to adapt instruction to individual student needs and learning styles by providing access to diverse expert perspectives and approaches to the same material. Students can experience different teaching styles and cognitive approaches until they find the methods that work best for their individual learning needs. Cultural education through neural streaming provides students with direct access to different cultural perspectives and ways of thinking, enabling more authentic cross-cultural understanding than traditional educational approaches. Students can experience different cultural viewpoints directly rather than simply learning about them intellectually, promoting genuine empathy and cultural competence. Language learning applications of neural streaming accelerate language acquisition by allowing students to experience native speaker cognitive processes and cultural context directly. Students can access the mental patterns associated with fluent language use while developing their own linguistic capabilities through traditional practice and interaction. Historical education through consciousness sharing enables students to experience carefully reconstructed approximations of historical perspectives and contexts, providing more immersive and engaging approaches to learning about past events and cultures. Educational historians develop neural experiences that help students understand historical contexts and perspectives more deeply than traditional textbook-based learning. Scientific education benefits significantly from neural streaming, as students can experience expert scientific thinking processes and experimental design approaches directly. Students can access the cognitive patterns that expert scientists use for hypothesis formation, experimental design, and data analysis while developing their own independent scientific reasoning capabilities. Artistic education through consciousness sharing allows students to experience creative processes directly from accomplished artists, musicians, and writers while developing their own unique creative voices. Students can access the mental states and cognitive processes associated with creative work while maintaining their individual artistic development and expression. Professional training applications of neural streaming have transformed career preparation across multiple fields by providing direct access to expert knowledge and skills while maintaining appropriate safety and ethical standards. Professional training programs can provide experiential learning opportunities that were previously impossible or impractical through traditional educational methods. Special education applications of consciousness sharing provide new approaches to supporting students with learning differences and disabilities by offering alternative pathways for accessing information and developing skills. Neural streaming can provide specialized learning experiences adapted to different cognitive styles and abilities while supporting inclusive educational practices. Assessment and evaluation methods in neural streaming education require new approaches to measuring learning outcomes when students have access to expert consciousness experiences. Educational evaluators have developed methods for assessing both direct knowledge acquisition and independent thinking capabilities, while ensuring that neural streaming enhances rather than replaces critical thinking skills. Teacher training and professional development for neural streaming education requires educators to develop new skills in consciousness, sharing integration, while maintaining traditional pedagogical expertise. Professional development programs help educators learn to effectively combine neural streaming with traditional teaching methods while ensuring appropriate educational outcomes. Educational equity considerations in neural streaming address concerns about access to consciousness, sharing technology, and the potential for neural streaming to exacerbate existing educational inequalities. Educational equity initiatives work to ensure that all students have access to beneficial neural streaming educational experiences, regardless of economic circumstances. Safety and ethical guidelines for educational neural streaming establish appropriate boundaries and protections for students, while enabling beneficial educational applications of consciousness sharing. Educational organizations have developed comprehensive frameworks for safely integrating neural streaming into educational programs while protecting student welfare. Curriculum integration strategies help educational institutions incorporate neural streaming effectively into existing educational programs while maintaining academic standards and learning objectives. Curriculum designers work to ensure that consciousness sharing enhances rather than replaces traditional educational approaches while achieving optimal learning outcomes. International educational cooperation through neural streaming enables students to access expert knowledge and cultural perspectives from around the world while supporting global educational development and cultural exchange. International educational organizations facilitate consciousness sharing programs that promote global understanding and educational equity. Research on educational neural streaming provides ongoing assessment of learning outcomes, student welfare, and best practices for consciousness sharing in educational contexts. Educational researchers study both the benefits and risks of neural streaming education while developing evidence-based guidelines for effective and safe implementation. Long-term impact assessment of neural streaming education examines how consciousness sharing affects student development, career preparation, and lifelong learning capabilities. Longitudinal studies track students who have used neural streaming education to understand the long-term effects on intellectual development and professional success. The educational revolution enabled by neural streaming demonstrates that consciousness sharing can dramatically enhance learning and skill development while preserving the essential elements of education that require independent thinking, creativity, and personal intellectual development. The successful integration of neural streaming into educational systems provides a model for how emerging technologies can be used to enhance rather than replace traditional educational approaches while serving diverse student needs and learning styles. The application of neural experience sharing to mental health treatment and therapeutic intervention has opened unprecedented possibilities for healing and psychological support, while requiring careful development of ethical frameworks and safety protocols that protect patient welfare and therapeutic integrity. Therapeutic neural streaming has become a valuable tool for mental health professionals while establishing new standards for consent, privacy, and therapeutic effectiveness in consciousness-based treatment. Controlled exposure therapy through neural streaming enables therapists to provide patients with carefully managed access to positive mental states and therapeutic experiences that can support healing and recovery. Patients with depression can experience controlled access to positive emotional states, while those with anxiety can gradually experience calming mental environments that support therapeutic progress. Empathy development therapy uses neural streaming to help patients develop better understanding of others' perspectives and experiences, particularly benefiting individuals with autism spectrum disorders, social anxiety, or interpersonal relationship difficulties. Therapeutic neural streaming can provide safe exposure to diverse social perspectives while building empathy and social understanding capabilities. Trauma processing applications of neural streaming enable therapists to guide patients through therapeutic experiences that support trauma recovery while maintaining appropriate safety controls and professional oversight. Patients can access supportive mental states and therapeutic perspectives that facilitate healing while remaining protected from re-traumatization. Addiction recovery support through consciousness sharing provides patients with access to mental states and perspectives that support sobriety and recovery while avoiding exposure to triggering experiences. Therapeutic neural streaming can provide access to positive emotional states and recovery-oriented thinking patterns that support long-term addiction recovery. Cognitive behavioral therapy enhancement through neural streaming enables therapists to provide patients with direct access to healthy cognitive patterns and emotional regulation strategies while supporting the development of independent coping skills. Patients can experience healthy thinking patterns directly while learning to develop these patterns independently. Group therapy applications of neural streaming create new possibilities for shared therapeutic experiences and mutual support among therapy participants. Group neural streaming sessions can enable participants to share supportive experiences and perspectives while maintaining appropriate privacy protections and therapeutic boundaries. Pain management applications use neural streaming to provide patients with access to mental states and cognitive strategies that can help manage chronic pain and physical discomfort. Therapeutic consciousness sharing can provide access to relaxation states and pain management techniques while supporting overall patient wellness. Meditation and mindfulness therapy through consciousness sharing enables patients to access expert meditative states and mindfulness practices directly while developing their own independent meditation capabilities. Patients can experience deep meditative states that might take years to develop independently while learning to cultivate these states personally. Phobia treatment through neural streaming provides gradual exposure to feared situations or objects in controlled therapeutic environments while maintaining patient safety and comfort. Therapeutic consciousness sharing can provide desensitization experiences that support phobia recovery while avoiding overwhelming exposure. Relationship therapy applications enable couples and families to experience each other's perspectives directly in controlled therapeutic settings while working on communication and understanding issues. Therapeutic neural streaming can facilitate empathy development and conflict resolution while maintaining appropriate therapeutic boundaries. Grief and loss counseling through consciousness sharing provides access to supportive emotional states and perspectives that can help patients process loss and develop healthy coping strategies. Therapeutic neural streaming can provide access to healing emotional experiences while supporting natural grief processes. Self-esteem and confidence-building therapy uses neural streaming to provide patients with access to positive self-regard and confidence experiences while supporting the development of independent self-worth and personal empowerment. Patients can experience healthy self-perception directly while working to develop these attitudes independently. Sleep disorder treatment through consciousness sharing provides access to healthy sleep states and relaxation experiences that can support better sleep hygiene and recovery from sleep disorders. Therapeutic neural streaming can provide access to restorative mental states while supporting overall sleep health. Stress reduction and relaxation therapy through neural streaming enables patients to access deep relaxation states and stress management techniques while developing independent stress reduction capabilities. Therapeutic consciousness sharing can provide immediate stress relief while supporting long-term stress management skill development. Professional training for therapeutic neural streaming requires mental health professionals to develop specialized expertise in consciousness sharing applications while maintaining traditional therapeutic skills and ethical standards. Training programs for therapeutic neural streaming address both technical competencies and ethical considerations for safe and effective practice. Patient consent and privacy protections in therapeutic neural streaming establish comprehensive frameworks for protecting patient rights and therapeutic confidentiality while enabling beneficial consciousness sharing applications. Therapeutic consent protocols ensure that patients fully understand the nature and implications of consciousness sharing therapy. Quality assurance and outcome measurement for therapeutic neural streaming provide ongoing assessment of treatment effectiveness and patient safety while identifying best practices for consciousness sharing therapy. Research on therapeutic neural streaming examines both benefits and risks while developing evidence-based treatment protocols. Ethical guidelines for therapeutic neural streaming address professional responsibilities, patient protection, and appropriate boundaries in consciousness sharing therapy while supporting beneficial applications of neural streaming technology. Professional organizations for mental health providers have developed comprehensive ethical frameworks for therapeutic consciousness sharing. Integration with traditional therapy approaches ensures that neural streaming enhances rather than replaces proven therapeutic methods while providing additional tools for supporting patient healing and recovery. Therapeutic neural streaming is used as an adjunct to traditional therapy rather than a replacement for established treatment approaches. Long-term outcome research on therapeutic neural streaming examines the sustained effects of consciousness sharing therapy while identifying factors that contribute to successful treatment outcomes. Longitudinal studies track patient progress and well-being following therapeutic neural streaming to ensure long-term safety and effectiveness. The successful integration of neural streaming into therapeutic practice demonstrates that consciousness sharing can provide valuable tools for mental health treatment while maintaining the essential elements of therapeutic relationship and professional care that support patient healing and recovery. Therapeutic neural streaming has enhanced rather than replaced traditional therapeutic approaches while providing new possibilities for supporting patient wellness and psychological growth. The development of comprehensive regulatory frameworks for neural experience sharing has required unprecedented cooperation among neuroscientists, ethicists, legal experts, and policymakers to create governance systems that protect fundamental human rights while enabling beneficial applications of consciousness sharing technology. The regulatory challenges posed by neural streaming represent some of the most complex policy questions ever addressed, requiring new approaches to protecting privacy, autonomy, and human dignity in technological contexts. International coordination of neural streaming regulation has required extensive diplomatic cooperation to create harmonized standards that enable global consciousness sharing while respecting national sovereignty and cultural differences. The International Neural Streaming Accords represent one of the most successful examples of global technology governance, establishing common standards while allowing for cultural adaptation and local implementation. Privacy protection regulations for neural streaming establish unprecedented legal frameworks for protecting consciousness data while enabling beneficial sharing of human experience. Neural privacy laws recognize consciousness data as fundamentally different from traditional personal information and require correspondingly stronger protection measures and user consent protocols. Consent framework development for neural streaming has created new standards for informed consent that account for the intimate nature of consciousness sharing while ensuring that users genuinely understand the implications of neural streaming participation. Consent regulations require extensive education and ongoing consent verification to protect user autonomy and decision-making. Safety standard enforcement ensures that neural streaming platforms maintain appropriate technical and operational safeguards while providing effective oversight and accountability mechanisms for regulatory compliance. Safety regulations address both technical system requirements and operational procedures for protecting user welfare during consciousness sharing. Content moderation regulations for neural streaming address the unique challenges of governing consciousness content while protecting freedom of expression and mental autonomy. Neural content regulations balance user protection with respect for diverse perspectives and experiences while preventing harmful or exploitative consciousness sharing. Professional licensing requirements for neural streaming services ensure that consciousness sharing platforms operate under appropriate professional oversight while maintaining quality standards and user protection. Licensing regulations require demonstrable expertise in neuroscience, ethics, and technology, while establishing accountability mechanisms for professional conduct. Cross-border enforcement mechanisms enable regulatory authorities to address neural streaming violations that span multiple jurisdictions while respecting different legal systems and international law. International enforcement cooperation prevents regulatory arbitrage while ensuring that consciousness-sharing regulations can be effectively implemented globally. User protection standards establish comprehensive frameworks for protecting neural streaming users from exploitation, harm, and inappropriate treatment while supporting beneficial applications of consciousness-sharing technology. User protection regulations address economic exploitation, psychological harm, and privacy violations while establishing recourse mechanisms for affected users. Research regulation frameworks enable beneficial scientific study of neural streaming while protecting research participants and maintaining ethical standards for consciousness sharing research. Research regulations balance scientific advancement with participant protection while ensuring that neural streaming research contributes to public welfare and knowledge. Platform accountability requirements establish clear responsibilities for neural streaming service providers while ensuring that platforms maintain appropriate oversight and control over consciousness sharing activities. Platform regulations address content moderation, user protection, and technical safety while enabling innovation and competition in neural streaming services. Economic regulation of neural streaming addresses pricing, competition, and market conduct issues while ensuring fair access to consciousness sharing technology and preventing exploitative business practices. Economic regulations promote competitive markets while protecting consumers from unfair pricing and ensuring broad access to beneficial neural streaming applications. Age-appropriate access controls ensure that neural streaming technology is used appropriately by different age groups while protecting minors from inappropriate exposure to consciousness-sharing content. Age regulations balance youth protection with educational and developmental benefits of appropriate neural streaming applications. Disability rights compliance ensures that neural streaming platforms and services are accessible to users with different abilities while providing equal access to consciousness-sharing benefits. Disability regulations require universal design principles and reasonable accommodations while ensuring that neural streaming serves diverse user populations effectively. Cultural sensitivity requirements address the need for neural streaming services to respect diverse cultural values and perspectives while preventing cultural appropriation and misrepresentation in consciousness-sharing content. Cultural regulations promote respectful cross-cultural sharing while protecting cultural integrity and community values. Quality assurance standards ensure that neural streaming platforms maintain appropriate technical performance and user experience standards while providing reliable and safe consciousness sharing services. Quality regulations address technical reliability, user interface design, and service delivery standards while enabling platform innovation and improvement. Data protection regulations for neural streaming establish comprehensive frameworks for protecting consciousness data throughout its lifecycle, while enabling beneficial uses of neural information for service delivery and research. Data protection regulations address collection, transmission, storage, and deletion of consciousness data while ensuring user control and privacy protection. Enforcement mechanism development creates effective tools for monitoring regulatory compliance and addressing violations while ensuring that neural streaming regulations can be implemented effectively and fairly. Enforcement mechanisms include inspection authority, penalty structures, and appeal processes while maintaining due process and proportional responses to violations. Regulatory adaptation procedures ensure that neural streaming regulations can evolve with technological development while maintaining consistent protection standards and regulatory effectiveness. Adaptation procedures enable regulatory updates and improvements while ensuring stakeholder participation and evidence-based policy development. Impact assessment requirements ensure that regulatory decisions about neural streaming are based on comprehensive analysis of costs, benefits, and social impacts while supporting evidence-based policy making. Impact assessment procedures examine economic, social, and cultural effects of neural streaming regulations while ensuring that policy decisions serve public welfare. The comprehensive regulatory frameworks developed for neural streaming demonstrate that even the most complex and intimate technologies can be governed effectively while protecting fundamental human rights and enabling beneficial applications. The success of neural streaming regulation provides a model for governing other emerging technologies that interact intimately with human consciousness and personal autonomy while serving public welfare and technological advancement. The worldwide adoption of neural experience sharing has revealed fascinating cultural differences in how societies approach consciousness sharing, privacy, social connection, and the appropriate role of technology in human relationships. These cultural variations have shaped the development of region-specific approaches to neural streaming while demonstrating both universal human needs for connection and understanding, as well as distinctive cultural values that influence technology adoption and use. Nordic countries have embraced neural streaming as an extension of their cultural values around social cooperation, equality, and collective welfare, developing comprehensive public neural streaming systems that provide universal access to consciousness, sharing technology, while maintaining strong privacy protections and democratic oversight. The Nordic model emphasizes neural streaming as a public good that should serve social cohesion and individual development. East Asian approaches to neural streaming reflect cultural values around harmony, respect, and collective responsibility, with neural streaming platforms incorporating sophisticated social etiquette systems and group consciousness features that enable collective experiences while maintaining individual dignity and autonomy. Japanese neural streaming culture particularly emphasizes respectful engagement and aesthetic refinement in consciousness sharing. Mediterranean cultures have integrated neural streaming with their traditional emphasis on community, family relationships, and emotional expression, creating neural streaming platforms that support extended family connections and community solidarity while preserving cultural traditions around privacy and personal boundaries. Italian and Spanish neural streaming communities emphasize warmth, authenticity, and interpersonal connection. North American neural streaming culture reflects values around individual choice, innovation, and economic opportunity, with diverse commercial platforms and extensive user customization options, while maintaining strong legal protections for user rights and technological innovation. American neural streaming markets emphasize consumer choice and entrepreneurial opportunities in consciousness sharing. African approaches to neural streaming have focused on cultural preservation, educational development, and community empowerment, with neural streaming platforms designed to support traditional knowledge transmission and cross-generational learning, while enabling economic development and global cultural exchange. Ubuntu philosophy influences African neural streaming designed toward collective benefit and community solidarity. Latin American neural streaming communities emphasize family connections, cultural celebration, and social justice applications, with consciousness sharing platforms designed to support extended family relationships and cultural preservation while addressing social inequality and educational access. Brazilian neural streaming culture particularly emphasizes joy, creativity, and inclusive community building. Middle Eastern approaches to neural streaming reflect cultural values around privacy, family honor, and religious observance, with specialized platforms that provide consciousness sharing while maintaining appropriate cultural boundaries and religious compliance. Islamic neural streaming platforms incorporate religious guidance and community oversight while enabling beneficial consciousness sharing applications. South Asian neural streaming development has focused on educational advancement, cultural diversity, and technological innovation, with platforms designed to serve multilingual communities and diverse cultural traditions while supporting economic development and social progress. Indian neural streaming platforms emphasize spiritual development, educational achievement, and technological excellence. Indigenous community approaches to neural streaming prioritize cultural sovereignty, traditional knowledge protection, and community self-determination, with specialized platforms designed to support cultural preservation and intergenerational knowledge transmission while maintaining community control over consciousness sharing activities. Indigenous neural streaming emphasizes respect for traditional wisdom and community autonomy. European Union coordination of neural streaming reflects regional values around human rights, democratic governance, and technological sovereignty, with comprehensive regulatory frameworks that protect user rights while enabling innovation and cross-border consciousness sharing. EU neural streaming policy emphasizes fundamental rights protection and democratic accountability. Russian and Eastern European neural streaming development has focused on technological advancement, cultural preservation, and educational applications while maintaining appropriate government oversight and security protections. Eastern European neural streaming emphasizes technical excellence and cultural distinctiveness while ensuring national security and social stability. Australian and New Zealand approaches to neural streaming reflect cultural values around fairness, safety, and multicultural inclusion, with regulatory frameworks that ensure equitable access to consciousness sharing while protecting vulnerable populations and maintaining high safety standards. Oceania neural streaming policy emphasizes practical benefits and inclusive access. Chinese neural streaming development has emphasized social harmony, technological advancement, and collective benefit, with comprehensive platforms that support education, cultural development, and social cooperation, while maintaining appropriate oversight and quality control. Chinese neural streaming culture emphasizes social responsibility and collective progress. Sub-Saharan African neural streaming communities have focused on educational development, cultural celebration, and economic empowerment, with platforms designed to support learning and cultural exchange while addressing development challenges and promoting economic opportunity. African neural streaming emphasizes educational advancement and cultural pride. Cultural exchange through neural streaming has enabled unprecedented opportunities for cross-cultural understanding, while requiring careful attention to cultural sensitivity and appropriate representation. International neural streaming programs facilitate cultural learning and exchange while protecting cultural integrity and preventing appropriation or misrepresentation. Religious community responses to neural streaming have varied significantly, with some faith traditions embracing consciousness sharing as a tool for spiritual development and compassionate understanding, while others maintain reservations about appropriate boundaries around consciousness and spiritual practice. Religious neural streaming applications emphasize spiritual growth and community support while respecting theological concerns. Generational differences in neural streaming adoption reflect broader patterns of cultural change and technological adaptation, with younger generations generally more comfortable with consciousness sharing while older generations approach neural streaming more cautiously and selectively. Intergenerational neural streaming programs support cultural transmission and mutual understanding across age groups. Economic development applications of neural streaming have enabled developing countries to access global consciousness sharing markets while building local technical capacity and cultural representation. International development programs support neural streaming infrastructure and training, while ensuring that consciousness sharing serves local development priorities and cultural values. Cultural preservation through neural streaming has enabled traditional communities to document and share their cultural knowledge and perspectives, while maintaining appropriate community control and cultural sovereignty. Cultural preservation programs use consciousness sharing to support intergenerational knowledge transmission, while protecting traditional wisdom and community autonomy. The diverse cultural approaches to neural streaming demonstrate that consciousness sharing technology can be adapted to serve different cultural values and social needs, while maintaining universal standards for safety, privacy, and human dignity. These cultural variations enrich the global neural streaming ecosystem while preserving cultural diversity and local autonomy in technology adoption and use. The widespread adoption of neural experience sharing has produced subtle but significant changes in human behavior, social relationships, and cultural norms that were not fully anticipated during the development and early deployment of consciousness sharing technology. These unintended consequences provide important insights into how intimate technologies can reshape society in ways that become apparent only after sustained widespread use and cultural integration. Empathy fatigue has emerged as an unexpected challenge for frequent neural streaming users who experience emotional exhaustion from excessive exposure to others' emotional experiences and perspectives. Mental health professionals have identified patterns of empathy burnout among users who consume neural streaming content extensively without appropriate breaks and emotional self-care, requiring new approaches to healthy consciousness sharing consumption. Social comparison intensification has resulted from access to others' internal experiences, as neural streaming users can now compare not just external achievements and appearances, but internal emotional states and cognitive abilities. This enhanced social comparison has contributed to increased anxiety and self-doubt among some users, particularly younger individuals who are still developing their sense of identity and self-worth. Authentic experience devaluation has occurred as some individuals begin to prefer vicarious neural experiences over direct personal experiences, finding neural streaming more convenient or emotionally satisfying than engaging with real-world activities and relationships. This preference for mediated experience has raised concerns about reduced motivation for personal growth and real-world engagement. Privacy norm erosion has developed gradually as neural streaming has normalized sharing intimate mental experiences, leading to generational differences in privacy expectations and reduced concern about mental privacy among younger users. This shift in privacy norms has implications for other technologies and social practices that involve personal information sharing. Cognitive homogenization concerns have emerged as frequent neural streaming users may develop similar thought patterns and emotional responses through exposure to popular consciousness sharing content. While this homogenization can promote social understanding, it may also reduce cognitive diversity and independent thinking that contributes to innovation and cultural development. Parasocial relationship intensification has resulted from the enhanced intimacy possible through neural streaming, leading to stronger and potentially problematic one-sided emotional connections between audiences and neural streaming celebrities. Mental health professionals have developed new approaches to helping individuals maintain healthy boundaries in parasocial relationships enabled by consciousness sharing. Reality perception blurring has affected some heavy neural streaming users who report difficulty distinguishing between their own experiences and vicarious experiences accessed through consciousness sharing. While most users develop effective mental categorization skills, some individuals require professional support to maintain clear reality perception and personal identity boundaries. Social skill atrophy has been observed among individuals who rely heavily on neural streaming for social connection and emotional support, rather than developing direct interpersonal relationships and communication skills. Educational and therapeutic programs have been developed to help neural streaming users maintain balanced social skill development and real-world relationship capabilities. Cultural appropriation facilitation has occurred as neural streaming enables individuals to access and potentially misuse cultural experiences and perspectives that don't belong to their own cultural backgrounds. Cultural communities have developed protocols for appropriate consciousness sharing while protecting cultural integrity and preventing exploitative use of traditional knowledge and perspectives. Educational dependency concerns have emerged as some students become overly reliant on neural streaming for learning, rather than developing independent thinking and problem-solving capabilities. Educational institutions have implemented guidelines to ensure that consciousness sharing enhances rather than replaces critical thinking and intellectual development. Decision-making delegation has increased as some neural streaming users begin to rely on accessed expert perspectives rather than developing their own judgment and decision-making capabilities. This delegation of cognitive responsibility has implications for personal autonomy and intellectual development that require ongoing monitoring and intervention. Emotional regulation disruption has affected some users whose natural emotional development and regulation capabilities are influenced by frequent access to external emotional experiences through neural streaming. Mental health professionals have developed new approaches to supporting healthy emotional development in the neural streaming era. Creative dependency has emerged among some artists and creative professionals who become reliant on neural streaming for inspiration rather than developing their own creative processes and original perspectives. Creative education programs have been adapted to ensure that consciousness sharing supports rather than replaces individual creative development. Identity formation complications have affected some young people whose identity development is influenced by extensive exposure to diverse consciousness experiences through neural streaming. Developmental psychologists have created new frameworks for supporting healthy identity formation, while young people navigate the complex relationship between personal identity and accessed experiences. Attention span reduction has been observed among some frequent neural streaming users who become accustomed to the immediate gratification and intense stimulation available through consciousness sharing, potentially affecting their ability to engage with less stimulating activities and experiences. Workplace productivity impacts have emerged as neural streaming use during work hours affects job performance and professional development. Organizations have developed policies and training programs to address appropriate workplace use of consciousness sharing technology while supporting employee well-being and productivity. Family relationship changes have occurred as neural streaming provides alternative forms of intimacy and connection that may affect traditional family bonding and communication patterns. Family counselors have developed new approaches to helping families integrate neural streaming appropriately while maintaining healthy family relationships. Sleep pattern disruption has affected some neural streaming users whose exposure to stimulating consciousness experiences interferes with natural sleep cycles and rest patterns. Sleep specialists have developed guidelines for healthy neural streaming use that supports rather than disrupts natural circadian rhythms and restorative sleep. Physical activity reduction has been observed among some users who prefer neural streaming experiences over physical activities and real-world engagement. Health professionals have developed programs to help neural streaming users maintain balanced lifestyles that include appropriate physical activity and real-world engagement alongside consciousness sharing. Economic inequality amplification has occurred as neural streaming technology and access may exacerbate existing inequalities in education, social connection, and cultural participation. Policymakers have developed initiatives to ensure equitable access to beneficial neural streaming applications while preventing consciousness sharing from increasing social stratification. The identification and study of these unintended consequences has led to important improvements in neural streaming technology, regulation, and user education, while demonstrating the importance of ongoing monitoring and adaptation as consciousness sharing technology continues to evolve and integrate with human society. Understanding these subtle societal shifts enables more thoughtful development and deployment of neural streaming technology while protecting human welfare and social cohesion. The continued evolution of neural experience sharing technology promises even more sophisticated and transformative applications that will further reshape human communication, learning, and social interaction, while raising new questions about consciousness, identity, and the appropriate relationship between technology and human experience. Current research and development efforts are exploring possibilities that seemed like science fiction just a decade ago, while maintaining the safety and ethical standards that have made neural streaming successful. Collective consciousness experiments are investigating the possibility of creating shared mental experiences among multiple individuals simultaneously, enabling group consciousness states that could revolutionize collaboration, education, and social coordination. Early research suggests that carefully managed collective neural experiences might enable unprecedented forms of group problem solving and creative collaboration while maintaining individual autonomy and identity. Memory integration research is exploring controlled approaches to sharing memory experiences while maintaining appropriate privacy protections and psychological safety. Limited memory sharing applications might enable new forms of education, therapy, and cultural preservation while requiring extensive safeguards to protect personal privacy and prevent psychological harm. Artificial intelligence integration with neural streaming is developing AI systems that can participate in consciousness sharing experiences, providing AI perspectives and capabilities within neural streaming contexts while maintaining clear boundaries between human and artificial consciousness. AI-enhanced neural streaming might provide new educational and creative possibilities while preserving the essentially human nature of consciousness sharing. Cross-species consciousness research is investigating the possibility of sharing experiences with other conscious species, potentially enabling unprecedented understanding of animal consciousness and environmental relationships. While still in early experimental stages, this research might provide new insights into consciousness itself while raising profound ethical questions about appropriate relationships with other species. Time-shifted experience. Sharing is exploring technologies that could enable sharing of consciousness experiences across different time periods, allowing individuals to share experiences with past or future versions of themselves or with others in different temporal contexts. This research addresses complex questions about consciousness, identity, and temporal experience while exploring potentially revolutionary applications. Enhanced sensory integration research is developing technologies that could enable sharing of enhanced or artificial sensory experiences, expanding human consciousness beyond natural sensory limitations while maintaining psychological safety and authentic human experience. Enhanced sensory neural streaming might provide new educational and artistic possibilities while raising questions about the nature of authentic human experience. Therapeutic consciousness modification research is exploring controlled approaches to using neural streaming for therapeutic modification of consciousness patterns, potentially enabling new treatments for mental health conditions while maintaining patient autonomy and psychological integrity. This research requires extensive ethical oversight and safety protocols while exploring potentially revolutionary therapeutic applications. Cultural consciousness preservation efforts are developing technologies and protocols for preserving and sharing cultural consciousness experiences, enabling future generations to access authentic cultural perspectives and knowledge while protecting cultural sovereignty and intellectual property. These preservation efforts might enable new forms of cultural education and exchange while maintaining appropriate cultural protections. Consciousness backup and preservation research is investigating theoretical possibilities for preserving consciousness patterns beyond individual lifetimes, raising profound questions about identity, mortality, and the nature of consciousness itself. While still highly speculative, This research explores fundamental questions about human consciousness and technological possibility. Educational consciousness. Simulation research is developing technologies that could enable students to experience simulated consciousness patterns for educational purposes, potentially enabling learning experiences that would be impossible through traditional methods while maintaining educational integrity and student safety. Creative consciousness. Collaboration research is exploring technologies that could enable new forms of creative collaboration through shared consciousness experiences, potentially enabling artistic and creative achievements that would be impossible through individual creativity alone, while preserving individual creative identity and contribution. Scientific consciousness research applications are investigating how neural streaming technology might enable new approaches to studying consciousness itself, potentially providing insights into the nature of human consciousness while advancing neuroscience and cognitive research. These research applications require careful ethical oversight while exploring fundamental questions about consciousness and cognition. Philosophical consciousness exploration research is using neural streaming technology to investigate philosophical questions about consciousness, identity, and human experience through controlled experiential investigations. This research might provide new insights into classical philosophical problems while demonstrating practical applications of philosophical inquiry. Consciousness accessibility research is developing technologies that could enable individuals with different consciousness capabilities to share experiences more effectively, potentially providing new approaches to supporting individuals with cognitive differences while celebrating neurodiversity and individual consciousness variation. Privacy technology advancement continues to develop more sophisticated protections for consciousness data while enabling beneficial sharing applications. Advanced privacy technologies might enable new forms of consciousness sharing while providing even stronger protections for mental privacy and individual autonomy. Regulatory framework evolution continues to adapt to emerging technologies and applications while maintaining protection for fundamental human rights and consciousness sovereignty. Regulatory adaptation requires ongoing cooperation among technologists, ethicists, and policymakers while balancing innovation with human protection. International cooperation expansion continues to develop global frameworks for consciousness, sharing research and development while respecting cultural differences and national sovereignty. International cooperation enables beneficial research while ensuring that consciousness sharing technology serves global human welfare. Ethical framework development continues to address emerging questions about consciousness sharing while maintaining respect for human dignity and individual autonomy. Ethical development requires ongoing dialogue among diverse stakeholders while establishing principles for beneficial consciousness sharing technology. Safety protocol advancement continues to improve protections for consciousness sharing participants while enabling innovative applications and research. Safety development requires ongoing monitoring and improvement while maintaining the high safety standards that have made neural streaming successful. The continued development of neural streaming technology promises exciting possibilities for human connection, learning, and experience while requiring ongoing attention to safety, ethics, and human welfare. The future of consciousness sharing will depend on maintaining the careful balance between innovation and protection that has characterized successful neural streaming development while exploring new possibilities for beneficial human experience and social cooperation. The widespread adoption of neural experience sharing has raised profound questions about preserving authentic human experience, individual identity, and cultural heritage in an era when consciousness itself can be shared, recorded, and transmitted across time and space. The challenge of maintaining human authenticity while embracing the benefits of consciousness sharing technology has become one of the most important cultural and philosophical questions of our era. Authentic experience preservation efforts focus on maintaining opportunities for direct, unmediated human experience alongside the enhanced possibilities offered by neural streaming technology. Cultural institutions and educational organizations have developed programs that encourage direct personal experience while using consciousness sharing to enhance rather than replace individual engagement with the world. Individual identity protection initiatives address concerns about how consciousness sharing might affect personal identity formation and maintenance, particularly among young people who grow up with extensive access to others' consciousness experiences. Mental health professionals and educators have developed approaches to supporting healthy identity development while enabling beneficial neural streaming participation. Cultural heritage documentation projects use neural streaming technology to preserve authentic cultural consciousness experiences while maintaining appropriate cultural sovereignty and community control. These projects enable cultural preservation and transmission while protecting traditional knowledge and preventing cultural appropriation or misrepresentation. Traditional skill preservation programs combine neural streaming with direct learning to maintain traditional crafts, arts, and knowledge systems while enabling broader access to cultural wisdom. These programs ensure that traditional skills and knowledge are preserved authentically while using consciousness sharing to support learning and cultural transmission. Generational wisdom transfer initiatives use neural streaming to facilitate knowledge and experience sharing between generations while maintaining respect for traditional knowledge, transfer methods, and intergenerational relationships. These programs support cultural continuity while adapting to contemporary technological possibilities. Direct experience advocacy promotes the importance of personal, unmediated experience alongside the benefits of consciousness sharing, encouraging individuals to maintain balance between neural streaming consumption and direct engagement with life and relationships. Advocacy efforts emphasize the irreplaceable value of personal experience and individual growth. Digital consciousness archiving creates comprehensive repositories of significant consciousness experiences while maintaining appropriate privacy protections and access controls. These archives serve research, education, and cultural preservation purposes while ensuring that important consciousness experiences are preserved for future generations. Authenticity verification systems help users distinguish between genuine consciousness experiences and artificially modified or enhanced neural content, maintaining trust and integrity in consciousness sharing while enabling creative and educational applications that clearly identify their nature. Cultural sovereignty protection ensures that communities maintain control over their consciousness-related cultural knowledge and experiences while enabling appropriate sharing in educational applications. Protection efforts respect community autonomy while supporting beneficial cultural exchange and understanding. Philosophical heritage preservation maintains access to traditional philosophical and spiritual practices alongside consciousness sharing applications, ensuring that contemplative and reflective traditions continue to contribute to human development and understanding. Educational authenticity programs ensure that consciousness sharing enhances rather than replaces critical thinking, creativity, and independent intellectual development in educational settings. These programs maintain educational integrity while utilizing the benefits of experiential learning through neural streaming. Artistic heritage protection preserves traditional artistic practices and creative processes while enabling new forms of artistic expression through consciousness sharing. Protection efforts ensure that traditional arts continue to thrive while supporting artistic innovation and experiential art forms. Family tradition preservation helps families maintain traditional bonding and communication practices while incorporating beneficial consciousness sharing applications that support family relationships and intergenerational understanding. Community heritage initiatives use neural streaming to support community identity and cultural preservation while maintaining traditional community practices and social structures that contribute to community cohesion and cultural continuity. Historical consciousness preservation documents significant historical consciousness experiences while maintaining appropriate ethical standards and historical accuracy. These preservation efforts contribute to historical understanding while protecting the dignity and privacy of historical figures and communities. Religious and spiritual heritage protection ensures that traditional spiritual practices and religious experiences continue to be valued and preserved, while enabling appropriate use of consciousness sharing for spiritual development and religious education. Craft and skill heritage programs preserve traditional manual skills and craftsmanship, while using consciousness sharing to support learning and knowledge transmission. These programs maintain the value of traditional skills while enabling broader access to craft knowledge and techniques. Natural experience preservation promotes direct engagement with natural environments and ecological systems alongside consciousness sharing applications that support environmental education and conservation. These efforts maintain human connection to nature while using technology to support environmental understanding. Personal growth authenticity initiatives support individual development and self-discovery while enabling beneficial use of consciousness sharing for learning and personal insight. These initiatives maintain the importance of personal growth while utilizing consciousness sharing to support individual development. The ongoing effort to preserve human authenticity in the age of consciousness sharing demonstrates the importance of maintaining balance between technological capability and essential human experiences that contribute to individual development, cultural continuity, and social cohesion. These preservation efforts ensure that consciousness sharing technology enhances rather than replaces the fundamental human experiences that contribute to meaningful life and authentic cultural development. The success of authenticity preservation initiatives shows that emerging technologies can be integrated with human society in ways that preserve essential human values while enabling beneficial innovation and social development. The careful attention to preserving authentic human experience while embracing consciousness sharing technology provides a model for integrating other emerging technologies in ways that serve human welfare and cultural continuity. As we conclude our comprehensive exploration of the remarkable transformation from traditional screen-based streaming to neural experience sharing, we find ourselves contemplating not merely a technological evolution, but a fundamental expansion of human communicative possibility that has reshaped our understanding of empathy, learning, and social connection, while raising profound questions about consciousness, authenticity, and the nature of individual experience in an increasingly connected world. The journey from Twitch to Mindstream represents more than technological progress. It demonstrates humanity's persistent drive to create deeper, more meaningful connections with others, while maintaining the essential boundaries and protections that preserve individual autonomy and dignity. The development of consciousness-sharing technology has shown that even the most intimate technologies can be designed and deployed safely when human welfare and ethical considerations guide development processes. The technical achievements that enabled neural streaming reflect unprecedented cooperation among neuroscientists, technologists, ethicists, and policymakers who recognized that consciousness sharing required extraordinary care and attention to safety, privacy, and human rights. The sophisticated infrastructure that supports contemporary neural streaming demonstrates that complex technologies can operate at global scale while maintaining individual protection and cultural sensitivity. The cultural adaptation to consciousness sharing has revealed both universal human needs for connection and understanding, as well as diverse approaches to privacy, social interaction, and appropriate technology use across different societies and communities. The successful integration of neural streaming with diverse cultural values demonstrates that technologies can serve global human needs while respecting local traditions and preferences. The educational transformation enabled by neural streaming has revolutionized learning and skill development while preserving the essential elements of education that require independent thinking, creativity, and personal intellectual growth. The integration of consciousness sharing with traditional educational approaches has shown that technology can enhance rather than replace human learning and development. The therapeutic applications of neural streaming have provided mental health professionals with unprecedented tools for treatment and support, while establishing new standards for ethical practice and patient protection. The success of consciousness sharing in therapeutic contexts demonstrates that intimate technologies can serve healing and human welfare when appropriate safeguards and professional oversight are maintained. The economic implications of neural streaming have created sustainable business models for consciousness sharing, while maintaining respect for human dignity and fair compensation for consciousness sharing work. The development of ethical economic frameworks for neural streaming has shown that intimate human experiences can be valued and exchanged while preserving essential human rights and autonomy. The regulatory frameworks developed for neural streaming have established precedents for governing emerging technologies that interact intimately with human consciousness and personal autonomy. The success of international cooperation on neural streaming governance provides models for addressing other global technology challenges while protecting fundamental human rights and cultural diversity. The privacy and security innovations required for neural streaming have advanced digital privacy protection while demonstrating that even consciousness data can be protected and transmitted safely when appropriate technical and legal safeguards are implemented. The privacy protection systems developed for neural streaming have applications for other technologies requiring protection of intimate personal information. The social transformation enabled by neural streaming has enhanced human connection and understanding while preserving essential aspects of individual identity and authentic personal experience. The integration of consciousness sharing with existing social institutions has shown that technological advancement can strengthen rather than undermine human relationships and community bonds. However, the evolution of consciousness sharing has also revealed ongoing challenges that require continued attention and careful management. The unintended consequences of widespread neural streaming use demonstrate the importance of ongoing monitoring and adaptation as technologies become integrated with human society and cultural practices. The future possibilities for consciousness-sharing technology promise even more sophisticated applications while requiring continued attention to safety, ethics, and human welfare. The development of advanced consciousness-sharing applications will depend on maintaining the careful balance between innovation and protection that has characterized successful neural streaming development. The preservation of authentic human experience alongside consciousness sharing has emerged as a crucial cultural challenge that requires ongoing attention to maintaining balance between technological capability and essential human experiences. The efforts to preserve human authenticity while embracing consciousness sharing demonstrate the importance of maintaining human agency and cultural continuity in technological contexts. The philosophical implications of consciousness sharing continue to influence understanding of human consciousness, identity, and the nature of meaningful experience. The questions raised by neural streaming about authenticity, privacy, and human connection will continue to shape how society approaches emerging technologies and their integration with human life. Looking toward the future, the success of consciousness-sharing technology provides both inspiration and guidance for developing other emerging technologies in ways that serve human welfare while respecting fundamental human rights and cultural values. The careful, ethical approach to developing neural streaming has established precedents that will inform the development of artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and other emerging technologies that interact intimately with human experience. The transformation from Twitch to Mindstream ultimately demonstrates humanity's remarkable capacity to adapt beneficial emerging technologies while preserving essential human values and experiences. The success of consciousness sharing shows that technological advancement can enhance rather than diminish human connection and understanding when development is guided by ethical principles and commitment to human welfare. As you reflect on this remarkable period of technological and social transformation, consider how the principles that guided successful neural streaming development, safety, privacy, consent, cultural sensitivity, and respect for human dignity, might apply to other emerging technologies and social challenges. The careful, thoughtful approach to consciousness sharing provides a model for how societies can embrace beneficial innovations while protecting essential human values and experiences. The journey from simple screen sharing to direct consciousness transmission reminds us that technological capability alone does not determine social outcomes. Rather, the choices we make about how to develop, deploy, and govern technologies determine whether they serve human flourishing or undermine human welfare and dignity. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of one of the most significant transformations in human communication and social connection. May your rest be peaceful, filled with appreciation for the remarkable human capacity to create technologies that enhance understanding and connection while preserving the essential qualities that make us uniquely human. The story of consciousness sharing ultimately teaches us that the future of human technology interaction remains unwritten, shaped by our ongoing choices about how to balance innovation with protection, connection with privacy, and technological capability with human authenticity. The success of neural streaming provides hope that emerging technologies can serve human flourishing when development is guided by wisdom, compassion, and unwavering commitment to human dignity and welfare. If you found value in this exploration of consciousness sharing, consider how you might contribute to thoughtful, ethical approaches to emerging technologies in your own life and community. The future of human-technology interaction depends on continued vigilance, careful consideration, and commitment to ensuring that technological advancement serves rather than diminishes human welfare and cultural richness. If you enjoy this type of content, a like or a subscription is always appreciated. It helps our small corner of the internet grow. I invite you to share your own thoughts in the comments below.